5-day seminar on mergers and acquisitions. Um, First of all, there's been a delay in starting the program. Apologies for that. We had to inaugurate and start a certificate course on UAE taxation, which was done for the first time. Physical batch has been done for the first time in India, in Bengaluru. So we were all there, and therefore there was some delay. So please excuse us for that. This mergers and acquisition, seminar on mergers and acquisition is, while we call it a seminar, but the intention is to get the practical insights into the consultancy related on the mergers and acquisition. And please do not look at this as a CPE seminar where you need to take off and get those things. Please take advantage of the whole session, because we have lined up good speakers, experienced speakers, who have done this and deal with these on a day in, day out basis. So definitely it will help and add value to your practice. And that's the whole idea of conceptualizing this seminar. With this, I welcome all of you to this seminar. I request CP Jain, our MC member, to escort Rahul Arora, who is the speaker of for today. Welcome to you, Rahul. I request our MC member, Rejo, to escort CA Rajaram Pai and also greet him with a floral bouquet. Jyotirmoy also. Welcome to you, Rajaram. We also have CA Jyotirmoy. I request Rejo to escort him to the dais and to hand over a floral bouquet to him. Sorry, I didn't realize, but then yes, most welcome to be part of this. I didn't notice that. Welcome to you. The broad structure of today's, may I request all of you to take your seats, please. The broad structure of today's seminar is like this. We'll be dealing with overall overview of M&A, what it means and how it goes about, and the transaction nature and types of transactions. What are the key stages of the transaction, due diligence, deal making and valuations, how do you negotiate and then come to make the deal successful, and the tax implications connected with this, whether it is GST or income tax, and also the compliances and the Companies Act, which will also have an impact. And if it is cross-border, then you'll have to keep the international taxation also in mind. So that will also be covered here. And the last session, we have a panel discussion, which will be on what are the challenges which are coming up because of the new age, both new age businesses and the laws which will be in place. So that is the overview of the seminar today. Moving on, a quick introduction of all the speakers who will be with us, who are with us today. CA Rahul Arora is a member of Institute of Chartered Accountants and also holds an MBA. He is the company secretary since 2011 and has more than 16 years experience working with Big Four. He has been involved in more than 200 M&A transactions and managed more than 150 plus due diligences. And it spans across various industries. So it's a privilege to have Rahul Arora with us. Thank you, Rahul, for being here. The next speaker who is with us is Rajarama Pai. He's a member of Institute of Chartered Accountants and holds bachelor degree from Bangalore Institute. Currently serving as Executive Director of M&A in Big Four, and has 22 years of experience and worked on statutory audit functions and M&A service teams. He specializes in financial due diligence and infrastructure sector companies. It's a privilege to have Rajarama Pai, CA Rajarama Pai with us. A warm welcome to you, Rajaram. Jyotirmoy Bhattacharjee. He's a partner, technology-focused investment banking and financial advisory practice for a firm called Consark. He began his career building statistical models for GE Commercial Finance and then worked in Wipro in handling their buy-side transactions for technology, media, and telecom verticals. His work with Deloitte and other leading the tech-oriented transactions for the last few years have been building practice at Konsak. He is an engineer and MBA from IIM Lucknow and loves working with entrepreneurs. It's a pleasure to have Jyotirmoy Bhattacharjee with us, and a warm welcome to you, Jyotirmoy. Thank you for being here. With this, now we formally inaugurate the seminar by lighting of the lamp. I request all the speakers to come over to the lamp, and also our MC members to come forward.
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्परब्रह्म दीपज्योतिर्जनार्दनः दीपज्योतिर्परब्रह्म दीपज्योतिर्जनार्दनः दीपो हरतु मे पापं सन्ध्यादीपनमोऽस्तुते ओ दीपब्रह्मरूपस्त्वं ज्योतिषां प्रभुरव्ययः ओ दीपब्रह्मरूपस्त्वं ज्योतिषां प्रभुरव्ययः आरोग्यं देहि पुत्रांश्च मतिं स्वच्छां हि मे सदा रवेरस्तं समारभ्य यावत् सूर्योदयो भवेत् रवेरस्तं समारभ्य यावत् सूर्योदयो भवेत् यस्य तिष्ठेत् गृहे दीपः तस्य नास्ति दरिद्रता शुभं कुरुत्वं
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते अस्मिन् लोकः श्रितः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता
I hand over the dais to Rahul and Rajarama.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone. That was very overwhelming for me at least. There was a time when I was sitting on the other side as a student, and this is one of my first of the sessions that I'm here as a speaker, and it certainly is a privilege. While it's called a seminar, there's a big difference between a seminar and a workshop, and I'm just throwing it out to the audience to let me know what's the difference between a seminar and a workshop. Anybody?
Workshop activities.
Yeah, workshop has activities. Anything else?
It's more specific, practical.
Okay, workshop is more practical. Anybody else? We chartered accountants never want to sit in the rear, right? We always want to be in the front, be the front runners. I'm not sure why we have occupied more seats at the back. So yeah, anyways, seminars are typically one-way communication. There's a presentation that's displayed, people speak, a lot of knowledge is passed on, but I feel not a lot of knowledge is grasped in that process because it can get boring, it's not engaging, there's no interaction. And then that's the difference that we would like to bring out today in our seminar. We don't want to conduct it as a seminar, but more as a workshop. And for that, all I need is your support. I can see a lot of senior faces over here. I'm sure in the kind of experience all three of us have, or all of us have over here, is much lesser than the experience even a single individual who is a senior chartered accountant here holds, right? So the more the interaction, the more the learning for us and for everyone around here. Coming to the subject, right, M&A. So we all studied. It was one of the chapters in accounting, and also as part of our strategic financial management, there was a sub-chapter called M&A. When I pursued my MBA, that was a separate subject itself. So imagine studying a subject for a semester, almost 2 semesters. I still remember the name of the professor who taught me M&A. His name was Professor Anantraman. He was an fellow person of Harvard, and one of the big deal makers of the United States. And he had taught us M&A as part of my MBA curriculum. And then I come to see, and I see one chapter, one on accounting and one on overall insights on M&A. Little bit of flavors in the law side as to what happens on the compliances side, and that was it, right? But when I took up M&A as a subject of profession, I was very clear that the reason for that was I wanted to somewhere use the knowledge that I had gained as an MBA. A lot of personality development happens as part of MBA, which I just wanted to make sure I apply right. I knew I'm not a technical accountant. I cannot be sitting and doing accounting. And that was the thought process I had for myself. And from then till today, right, it's been almost 14 years, and even single day that I work, I don't think my learning has stopped. So imagine the vastness of the subject, right? It's not a subject where you can apply a technical concept like an accounting concept, right? You cannot change revenue recognition standards, right? A standard is given on the paper, you have to just apply it right. And as long as you apply it right, you're good. But M&A is such a varied subject where the application from one transaction to the other transaction differs significantly. When I said significantly, it can just a transaction can be made on an account versus on the same account a transaction can also collapse. So M&A in particular is such a vast subject, and hence it certainly cannot be covered in a single day's workshop or a seminar. So we'll try to cover in as much depth as possible. I'll just give you the way, when the chairman of ICI Bangalore reached out to me to structure this program, and it was a big challenge for me as to how do I make sure that we have enough imparted, enough grasped, and enough learned for all of us, right, including ourselves. I'm sure a lot of questions that are going to come up from all of you are going to make it a very learning experience for us. So we wanted to make it into a flow which is easy for you to grasp as to what typically happens in M&A. Not particularly from the technical accounting side, right? Accounting is certainly a separate subject that we can talk about or have a separate sessions. But just to give you a flavor, practically what happens on the ground, what truly is an M&A, what are the different types of M&A that happens. In the process, what are the different steps that come in, who are the different parties that get involved, what kind of important decisions are taken by the management when they decide to get into an M&A. And that's with that regard is why I invited Mr. Jyotirmoy, who is an investment banker, who's sat on the sell side and the buy side in multiple transactions, negotiated from either of the sides. He has helped multiple companies in fundraisers. He's helped many of the VCs and private equities go and get good assets of funding. So he has a good flavor of the knowledge, but he's not an accountant. He's an MBA who just does investment banking to earn his bread and butter. So I thought it will be a good idea for us to bring somebody like Jyotirmoy on the stage to give that kind of knowledge. And then we also have a session that we would want to cover on few of the critical life cycle processes of M&A. One of them is due diligence, which involves significant amount of effort and becomes like a most important step in any evaluation of an M&A transaction by the investors or by the buyers. And then we have the most important and most complex of the subjects in the M&A, which is M&A tax. I'm joined by CA Aditya Nevekar here, who will be taking that session. And he'll be joined by Jayashree also. So that's the plan. And I just want to gauge the audience, and don't mind, please raise your hands. I just want to check how many of us are from what background of profession, so that we can fine tune our plan of workshop accordingly. I'll just call out and just feel free to raise your hands. How many of you are from Industry, startups. How many of you work in startups? Please feel free. Okay. Industry, corporates. Okay, and chartered accountants, big fours. Chartered accountant, non-big fours. Okay, so most of you. Okay, so what we will try to then do today is try to give you a download and the process flow so that tomorrow when your clients approach you for an M&A transaction, what and where can you come in? How can you make a difference? What are the things that you need to keep in your mind? We'll try to balance it out more from the advisory side than it being more from the strategic financial industry side. And then we will try to fine tune it that way. So please be participative. I'm going to be moderating. I'll be there all the sessions. You'll see me interjecting conversations when a presentation is being made. When something doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to raise my hand and ask a question. And I want you guys also to please do that. As long as you ask questions that come onto your mind, you know, that question might be there in many of our minds as well. And that's just one hand that needs to be raised to ask so that a lot of clarification can come in for all of us. And with that, we'll start. Looking forward to having a good interaction with you all. Thank you. Jyotirmoy.
I shall use this one, okay. Or shall I use, okay, this is good. Okay. Hi, am I audible? Hi, good morning everyone. It's quite intimidating to stand in front of some 200 odd chartered accountants because that's one area which is opaque to me as a black hole. So if you ask me questions like how a PAS-4 is filed and what are the standard accounting principles that we need to follow, how IFRS to whatever other stuff, Ind AS and all these things are to be done, please feel free to direct all the questions to others. And this is my fundamental learning from working with CAs, that everything should start with a caveat. We are not responsible for anything, any opinion whatsoever, okay? We are just there for our fairness value or sex appeal or whatever it is, okay? M&A, so how, I am sure, anyways, by the way, I think the house is filled, so I don't need to ask you guys to come in front and do the usual spiel of it enthuses the speaker, but it does enthuses the speaker, so if some of you can come in front, it'll be nicer for me, but otherwise I am fine. I have forever been a last bencher in my school, college, so I am okay with this setup, so we can start. What I will cover today would be more towards the nuances of the process. See, I'm an engineer by profession, but I would have probably hardly attended 50% of my classes, and that too in a subject like electronics engineering, which is fundamentally tough, okay? So my understanding of engineering and technology was, to say, bare minimum to begin with. My understanding of accounting and the allied areas was non-existent. So combining the two, I am in a profession where I am supposed to combine these two aspects only. It is like investing in crypto. It essentially combines two areas which most of the people do not understand at all, technology and finance. So it's equivalent of that. So I do that where I try to combine aspects of tech and aspects of finance to create a deal construct that is beneficial for both the parties on a table. So, Rahul, do I have the, okay. How do I operate this, okay? Okay. And how do I go to the, okay, just do me a favor. Yeah. So, sorry, I just want you to have a look at the video. Don't get bothered by the, okay, just it has to be, volume? Yeah, volume. So can you give volume? Start from. Okay, I do not know the relevance of the video. This is from one of my favorite movies, and the only thing that came to my mind where I wanted to start with a movie clip just like that. And the only one that came to my mind was this movie, and it happens to be one of my favorite books and favorite movie. It's a movie called The American Psycho by Christian Bale. I don't know whether you have seen it or not. If it is not, it's a must watch. It's about an investment banker, Wall Street banker, who's a serial killer. And the only parallel that I can draw between a serial killer and an investment banker is the fact that we too stalk our clients with as much tenacity as a serial killer would do. We chase them for years, we spot them, and then we slay them. So that's where the similarity is between Christian Bale and me. I think that's where it stops. If it is too much of a trouble, okay, just.
Where did Craig go?
Well, Gorbachev is downstairs. McDermott went to sign a peace treaty between the United States and Russia. He's the one behind Glasnost.
He said he was in mergers and acquisitions.
You're not confused, are you?
No, not really.
Gorbachev is not downstairs.
Karen's right. Gorbachev's not downstairs. He's a tunnel. Ask me a question.
So what do you do?
I'm into, murders and executions mostly.
Do you like it?
Well, it depends. Why?
Well, most guys I know who work in mergers and acquisitions really don't like it.
Okay.
So, where do you work out?
Okay, so I don't know whether you got the audio right. Essentially, what it says is, one second. So this lady asks Christian Bale that, what do you work on? He says, murders and executions. Okay, so which I said is an equivalent, is a parallel to mergers and acquisitions and murders and executions. And then she asks that, okay, do you like it? He said, well, that depends on who the victim is, which is true. I mean, how pliant is your client is what it depends on. And then she says that, well, I know of people, most of the guys whom I know who works in mergers and acquisitions do not like it. But he says, well, that depends again on whom I like. Anyways, the bottom line is that, as I said, the key takeaway is we stalk our victims, we find them, we stalk them, we slay them, and that's what a banker does, identifying the right target. However, there was this, I'll paraphrase Warren Buffett, and this is not Warren Buffett's comment, this has been, I have added layers to it, Jyotirmoy Bhattacharjee has added layers to it. So investment banking is the only profession where clients who drive in Rolls-Royce, they come to seek advice from people like us who would have Uberized from Sarjapur Road to Rajarama Nagar today morning. So that's the reason why investment banking is fun, because you are talking to people who really have made it big in life, who are talking about multi-million-dollar transactions, and whose advice they are depending on. People like us. When I started, I was at the bottom of the pyramid doing Excel sheet, knowing how to make a good PPT. That was all that I knew. Okay, and I would see that people who are my first transaction was where I worked with a company called Quantech. So I was on the buy side for Wipro, and this was Dr. Mukesh Gandhi, who had set up 3 to 4 companies. And I remember walking into the room, giving him gyan about how the valuation would work, and I was thinking to myself that, boss, this is probably living in a dream, because this guy already has a net worth of 20-30 million, and I actually took an auto from Koramangala and went to Wipro office to do this work. So I was like, okay, fine. So clearly this is my calling. So if you like being on the thick of things, then M&A, fundraise, investment banking overall as a profession is definitely something that gives you an adrenaline rush, which is, I have never tried drugs, but I'm sure those who try all those hard stuff, they might get some rush like that. But it's a damn good adrenaline rush. With that, I will move to something which is probably more fundamental. What is M&A? So M&A is nothing but the corporate speak of selling ice to an Eskimo. Now, and you will call it consolidation. So what do I mean by that? I mean, do Eskimos, do they need more ice? No, right? But you can sell them and say that, you know what, in the Arctic ice circle is whatever, Arctic ice cap is melting, so you might need some frozen dry ice that we make in Bangalore and I can sell it to you. So you buy a dry ice company in Bangalore, and that we term it as consolidation. If that strategy doesn't work and you have to go now to Dubai and sell it to a sheikh, then you say, block of ice to a Bedouin or an Arab sheikh and say that this is diversification. All that you know is sand and heat. So you need some cool in your life, so diversify. So this is called diversification. So these are the two primary drivers that drives any transaction. And when I say any transaction, I'll be talking about M&A today with slight detours to fundraise, PE, etc., which eventually always leads to an M&A in some form or the other. The end goal is always an exit, right? Sorry, I'll just pause here. Any kind of, I have really not spoken anything of substance. I've been faffing around, but if still there is any question at this point in time, happy to take that. Please interrupt me and ask me questions. More than happy to take that. So, what are the triggers for M&A? See, always the primary trigger has been consolidation. If you are big, you own the supply chain. Anyone, can you tell me what a vertical integration versus an horizontal integration is? Any guess? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Horizontal is within the sector?
That is happening within the sector.
Okay.
The vertical is in your value chain, and like upstream or downstream when you are acquiring any company. So that is what is a vertical.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, vertical is when you are acquiring a company in the value chain, upstream or downstream, then that is vertical integration. And horizontal would be?
Within the sector.
Within the sector. Okay. Absolutely right. But again, there is no, it is all very subjective. So there is nothing like objective right here. Any other definition that we have on at least on the vertical, I don't think so I can add anything more. That is what it is. Horizontal, is there any other way? Is it always within the sector? Okay, let me do it this way. Among these, can any of you tell me which is an consolidation? Sorry? Zomato acquiring Uber Eats is consolidation. Is it vertical, horizontal, right? But if I look at Reliance acquiring REC, is that a horizontal? What will you call it? It could be vertical. It is more into operations, from generation to operation. Is it exactly within the sector? Reliance had always been more energy from a petrochem side, okay, chemical side of the energy focus, right? But that is solar, clearly. So, sort of within the sector, but not really directly in the sector, right? It is somewhere in an allied area. So, horizontal can essentially be within a particular segment, or a new product line which is allied, or a new market. Okay, it can be all that. So we can term it as club it under horizontal. Diversification. Okay, diversification is the second driver. More revenue stream, merrier the balance sheet. Okay. Now, how many of you are aware of this concept called there is something in stock market which is called as an efficient frontier. Okay. Efficient frontier is that, do you remember the story of Goldilocks and the three bears? Any of you? Okay, so Goldilocks was this girl who went out, she ventured out from her mama papa's cottage. She went to the jungle and she found a house. The house had, first she found some soup. Okay, there were 3 tables and chairs. So one table was too big, one table was too small, and then one table was just perfect. One table was, then on those tables there were 3 bowls of soup. One was too hot, one was too cold, one was just perfect. And then she slept, and so on and so forth. So that's like, so whenever you find that optimum, right? It is like Earth. We are not too far away from sun to be a hellhole, to be like a cold like Pluto. We are not too close to sun to be to be like Mercury, to be hot, right? And so that's the same concept that is applied in stock market, which is called efficient frontier, which essentially says that your risk should be diversified enough, but not the stock market is still fine that you can diversify to the extent possible so that you become completely aligned with the index or to the market, which is the principle on which all the index funds and all operate in. But in a corporate scenario, diversification should be limited. Wipro, when I was in their buy side, Wipro had a travel agency of its own. Okay, it was an IATA CETA approved travel agency. The whole concept was that so many people are traveling, so Wipro should have a travel agency. Now, that is stretching diversification a bit too far. But Wipro similarly had a policy that, you know what, we will not invest in any company where the EBITDA is below 15% and where the internal rate of return hurdle rate is below 18% right now for the next 2 to 3 years. What happened is, due to that, we completely missed the IoT bus. Because that diversification is not just about which sector, which segment you want to go to. Diversification is also about how rigid you are about your policies, that I will be this and this only, which is also fine. It's okay, if it works for you, it's fine. All these are hindsight is 20/20, they say, right? So when you look back into something and see it has worked, then you say, oh, my strategy was fantastic. And when you say that it doesn't work, it's like the pollsters, right? If you're the party that you have predicted it wins, you say my exit polls work. If it doesn't win, you will come up with 20 different reasons on why it doesn't work. And consultants make money in both the scenario. So diversification is something which is a super important criteria in M&A, but it has to be taken in that Goldilocks amount, not too hot, nor too cold, just the between part. Let's talk about the other one, which is geographical expansion. So when you sell a car in Germany, what will the salesman say? What will be the pitch of the salesman? Anyone? What would be the pitch, primary pitch of the salesman? Fast. Sorry? Quality. Okay. Yeah, quality should be true everywhere. The question is what defines quality? Power. Again, force, how fast it goes. Anything else? Safety, because it goes fast, so it has to be safe. Okay, the brakes are to work properly and so on. Okay, brands. Okay, performance. Yes, performance again, Rahul. New technology. Yes, new technology. Renewable. How, whether it is spewing out fumes of gas or not. Okay, in those pristine fields of Bavaria, you do not want a vehicle, a Tata Ace bellowing out smoke and so on, right? But what should be the pitch or should be the key criteria when think of it as somebody who's staying in Bannerghatta Road or near Sujata on a given day, what kind of pitch should ideally go to that? Ground clearance, right? We'll talk about ground clearance. We will talk about what else? Mileage, because you will be driving in first and second gear throughout, right? Sorry? Oh, after sales service, right? So what I'm trying to convey here is that it is a no-brainer that geographically, when you are trying to sell something, okay, the selling proposition is completely different. And I'm not talking about M&A here. I'm talking about a simple, any sale. I mean, if I'm an IT services company, when I sell to a German customer, and I'll come to an example on that, when I sell to a German customer versus when I sell to an Indian customer, the proposition is completely different. आप बोलोगे ना कि ये sale ही तो है, जाके कुछ बकना है, just say whatever faff you want to say, put it all on the delivery, let the delivery guys get screwed later. Absolutely fine. But on what the delivery guys would get screwed is something that you need to be cognizant of. So the way a company sells IT services in Germany, the same technology, SAP, Oracle, React Native, and whatnot, Salesforce, the same technology you sell in India, the same technology you sell in Germany, radically different approach. So if today, if you need to have access in certain markets, it is absolutely important that you have feet on the street there. You have people who knows the nuances of that particular market. And it is again a no-brainer. Most of the sales is driven by relationship, and relationship cannot happen over phone. It just doesn't happen beyond a point. I mean, like any other long-distance relationship, at some point in time, people have to come and stay together to build a meaningful one. Otherwise, people stray, right? So that's one. Last thing is future-proofing. Any of you do you remember Alice in Wonderland? Yeah? Yeah, so the Red Queen of Hearts, do you remember? She asked Alice to, or whatever, there was this party, not Alice, everybody, to keep running so that they stay on the same place, right? So it's like a treadmill. So it's called Red Queen principle. I just gave a fancy name to it. It is not called that. I just generally made it up. But basically, future-proofing is that any company which is not looking at the future and trying to acquire skill set, be it in any sector, acquire skill set, technology, expertise, which enables you to address the market of the future. You are going to, you will be a Nokia, okay? You will be a Xerox. Xerox had, I don't know whether, so everything, your mouse, router, LCD, given in this room, out of the 10 technologies that we have, 9 out of them would have come out of this Park Lab, Palo Alto Xerox. They never monetize it. They say, okay, some people are working, let them work. These are mad buggers. We will keep on printing and faxing. That's all they did, and that's what they're doing right now. Okay? Whereas people who have taken those technology, right from Apple to Microsoft, have become trillion-dollar companies. So future-proofing is a super important principle which should drive mergers and acquisitions. I will pause here before you ask me any questions about the topic per se. Is this, this is how I have done it, so even if you say no, I don't know how to change it, but I'll try to wing it. But is this relevant to you guys because I don't want to talk about accounting that you know 100 times better than me. I'm just trying to give the softer aspect. Is it something that is okay with you guys, everyone? Even if you say no, I don't know what I'll do, but okay, thank you. I'm taking the silence as a nod, assent to my ear. Okay, so, okay, we discussed Zomato acquiring Uber Eats. Okay, tell me this. You said Zomato acquiring Uber Eats is consolidation. Is it also, can I also say, okay, let's look at the Tata acquiring 1mg and Big Basket acquiring funding. Let's not be too technical about this. What would have driven Tata to acquire 1mg or fund 1mg? 1mg is the online pharmacy company, right? What would have driven Tata to invest in that? Why? Any guesses? Diversification. Tata trust, because I have trust in the market. That's the biggest component of my balance sheet, quantifiable or otherwise. In pharmacy, in medicine, in healthcare, you need trust is the fundamental factor. So I monetize the trust. Any other reason why Tata would acquire 1mg? Is supply chain a reason? I already have access to 1 million retail outlets, right? So what stops and 1mg is again an online, offline, it's all hybrid model. I'm saying long term, forget what it is right now. What stops me from accessing pharmacy, the same pharmacy distribution chain? I can monetize the same distribution network, more or less. Again, nothing that I am saying here is biblical truth, कि ऐसा ही होना है. But a distribution network which distributes soap and shampoo theoretically can also be monetized to distribute medicines, something that Udaan is doing right now. Earlier it was always like there'll be a pharma ka value chain kaisa rahega, there will be a super stockist, then there will be a C&F agent, then there will be somebody else with different names. Bottom line, there will be some intermediaries. They'll finally, a tempo will come and put the medicine in the various stores, right? Now, on the other hand, IT, your technology products like your laptop, etc., all that would go via a very set of channels, right? There will be this set of guys in places like JC Road, whatever, Palika Bazaar, etc., who would be distributors. They will sell half of their items there, then they will sell some of it via the dealer network. But honestly, what stops the same set of guys to do both the activities? Because they are not manufacturing. The guy who is selling computers in JC Road doesn't know anything more about coding than I do, which is zero, okay? Or not zero maybe, okay, I'm slightly better, but okay. So bottom line is, whatever these transactions are, they are driven by an potential ability to leverage your existing supply chain, existing value chain, etc.
Jyotirmoy, the way I see it, right, like Tata 1mg, and I'll just share my thoughts as to what I think about it. Tata Consumer, for instance, had a modern trade channel of retail. Like they had some stores where, Tata Star, for instance, right, the whole partnership was set up for Tata to be able to distribute its own consumer goods very easily, right? They had a private labels of Tata Group, which were being sold. I think they were missing a biggest of the channels that came up in India in the last 10 years, which was the marketplace, quick commerce, digital. I guess them getting 1mg and Big Basket was to get into that channel, somewhere create a digital footprint for, it can be looked at horizontal and vertical also. The way I look at it vertically is they have their own private label manufacturing setups where they wanted to create a distribution channel over and beyond the modern trade. Or it can be looked at as diversification. Tata Group is known for being one of the biggest conglomerates in India. And I'm sure we understand what the meaning of conglomerate is. We don't need to get into that. And I believe them buying 1mg and Big Basket or investing in those companies was more to create a digital footprint to say we are also there in this marketplace channels. They can push their private labels and also an easy distribution, right? Otherwise, I'm sure many of your clients will be having distribution businesses, the kind of commissions that the distributions take, the kind of working capital lock-in that the distribution channels have per se is super huge. Now, how do you make sure that you actually start making money in the process than losing money as distribution commissions is when you diversify your channel itself, right? It doesn't have to be diversification of products or sectors. It can be channel diversification also. And that is where I feel what Tata Consumer or Tata's bought Big Basket made good sense for them. 1mg, my take is, Reliance bought, I think, Netmeds.
Yeah.
And I think Reliance was going all out. Fortunately, we have worked on multiple of these transactions, advised the names that are there on the screen, and we know a little bit of insight as to what was driving those transactions. Without naming the client, but I'll quote, both the conglomerates were looking to diversify. There's a little bit of competition between themselves as well, that he's done it, I need to do it, kind of an approach, and hence they keep chasing assets. At times, we have done value evaluations of businesses for similar kind of buyers separately. I remember having diligenced one of the big names over here, which is now listed, for some other investor, and then that investor invested into another company which got listed recently. We did both the evaluations, both the diligences. It was very clear as to why they are getting into those transactions. But yeah, so that's the point. It's not very simple to categorize them into horizontal approach or a vertical approach. At times, it's a strategic decisions that the corporate managements take in order to diversify their businesses or probably consolidate their businesses for bringing in more value for their shareholders. At the end of the day, what drives them is to make sure the P&L and the balance sheet looks much healthier than the yesterday. And that's what the key driver is, and those are my thoughts, Jyotirmoy.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think totally in sync with you. A classification into any bucket is very difficult. Transactions is all subjective. It's like literature. whatever flies, what different stroke for different folks. So no set rules, and actually there is no set rule. Had there been any set rule, I would have never been able to work at a personal level because not possible. But yeah, I want to talk about a transaction here. This Wipro acquired Cellent. Why I want to talk about it is because right now, Rahul, I am okay. I am out of Deloitte long back. So I ran this transaction on the buy side for Wipro. So I was in Deloitte representing Wipro for this transaction. It's public transaction, so it's okay. We can talk about it. So okay, it's a German SAP company. What do you think was the primary driver? Geography. Yes. Any other thoughts? What is the primary driver? Yes, definitely always technology. Yes, SAP. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, SAP gives you an entry into the within the entire process flow of the organization. If you're implementing SAP, you will have your you will have a wallet share of the CFO also a bit, the CTO also a bit, the COO also a bit, and so on. Okay, but yeah, primarily why I want to talk about this is again no-brainer. It's a geography thing. Okay, so I remember when I started this transaction, so I used to work for Wipro before, so I knew the M&A team there. So again, it's a very, very relationship-driven process. So one simple word of advice for those of you who, I mean, okay, at least I have salt and pepper right now, so last 15 odd years. Whether you learn any skill set or not doesn't matter. There will somebody else who will do it for you. But what you need to bloody hell do is build relationships. That's all. That Rolls-Royce and Uber example, why would I forget Azim Premji? I would have, why would a person who is running a BPO, which is doing 30 CR in revenue and generating 15% EBITDA, that guy, along with his so-called quote-unquote salary, can take out 3 to 4 crore of cash any given year. Why would he listen to you coming and giving him gyan about business? It's only because you build that relationship over the years. It's a long cycle game. It is frustrating, painful. I am running 3 transactions right now. 2 of them, I know them from 2010. And I've been trying to sell them forever. And this time we are selling. I've got 3 offers in hand. So I would have sold them at 5 million before. Right now we are getting offers which are at a 50 million range. So yeah, so that's the kind of payback that you get if you persevere in this field. Okay, so this is a game of perseverance and betting your money on the right horse. See, actually, you are the jockey here. You are the horse. You are the jockey. You are the bettor. When we work on M&A transactions, sorry, I'm digressing a bit. Just I hope you're able to follow the flow. So forgive me, I'll not go exactly by the way. So when you're doing an M&A transaction in India, the way the bankers have screwed the market is there is no concept of a retainer fee. So an M&A transaction is going on. I do 90% of the work. Who makes money? Final. If the transaction goes through, I make money. If the transaction doesn't go through, Rahul makes money. Rahul and Rajarama makes their money, and they go away. Some lawyer makes their money, they go away. Finally, who's left holding the bag? It's me, because all my fee is success fee based. Okay. So tomorrow, when you guys, if you really want to do this, take this pain in life, then please make sure that the new generation of people who are coming on the advisory side, please charge retainer to your clients. It definitely sets a good precedent in the market. I do not know who those bankers were who set the precedent of not charging any any retainer, but it is a set standard in the market and nobody pays you retainer. So it's a sad reality of the business, however much glam it looks like. And the problem is, you have to be, okay, I mean, I would not say my glam quotient is high, but at least you need to be doing the right things. You cannot go and discuss about a multi-million-dollar transaction and say that, you know what, let's go to the tapudi and have tea and sutta. You have to do it over a drink and you have to order a black label because the promoter only drinks that. I'm just saying, honestly, Those are the things that matters in a transaction, because finally that guy has to trust you, give you his data, has to open his books for you. Why will he do that, right? So those softer aspects are way more important. Coming back to Wipro and Celent, I remember Shankari, who was my associate, she came up with the name of this company. It's a federal, one of Germany's 4th largest bank, Federal Bank, they are subsidiary. I did research, I said, yeah, this will fly. I went for a meeting with Wipro. They said this will fly. Land was my previous boss. They said it will fly. Then I call up my German partner in the typical German fashion. He is a bloody corporate finance partner. This is only one job, that is to sell company. Otherwise, why is he sitting there? Why there is a India-Germany interaction? He said, no, it won't sell. We won't sell to him. Like, that's the reason why you are there, right? You are there to convince the seller to sell the company. Otherwise, why will he pay you? Why will the buyer pay you money? No, Jyotirmoy, this won't sell. I said, okay, fine. Then I kept at it. It was a 2.5 years cycle transaction when the buyer was ready, okay, and buyer was ready to buy this asset. The reason why Wipro bought it is because imagine somebody paying you money for a 8% EBITDA asset, you are getting 1x of revenue multiple, which means it was a 92 million euro company. They sold it at 92 million. Okay, which is basically, if you are a, how much, if it is a 10% EBITDA, what is the EBITDA multiple? The revenue multiple is 1. So 100 million, let's say, was the revenue of the company. They sold it for 100 million. Its EBITDA, operating profit, was 10%. So what is the EBITDA multiple? 10. So it was a 10 multiple asset that you are getting, but they were not willing to sell. So imagine how difficult it is to sell IT services, to go to a German bank and say that, you know what, there will be some guy sitting in India who will be doing your SAP and finance and accounting work. The first thing they will do is throw you out of the room. Okay? They might say Sieg Heil and Heil Hitler also and throw you out. So you need a German there. You need a German presence, and that's the reason why geographic expansion is a key to many of the transactions. What are the M&A triggers for sellers? What do you think are the triggers for sellers? Why would a seller sell? That's another spot that you have to hit. Why do you think a seller would sell? Okay, globally evolve, I'll come, okay. What else? Saturation in the business, yes. Very good point. Yes, मैंने खड़ा कर दिया 20 crore का revenue, अब मेरा औकात उतना ही है, that is fine. The moment we realize that, it's a super important, right, that I can, and that's why entrepreneurs they all know what they can or cannot do. So hitting them at this one transaction that I'm talking about, why they never sold via me? Because they knew that once they attain 30 million, they will hit saturation. Not saturation, theoretically it can grow, but can they do it, those two gentlemen do it? No. They need a bigger balance sheet, they need to address bigger RFPs and so on. Okay, saturation. What else? What is the, sorry? Exit non-core business, great. So especially when it comes to conglomerates, or forget conglomerates, people who are like, can you give an example where it is not a conglomerate but an exit with a non-core business happened? Anything, even a hypothetical example.
Wipro, this thing exited from their consumer care.
Okay, yeah, okay, Wipro's not maybe fully, yeah, but whatever, yeah, let's say if Wipro today decides to exit from consumer care, or or for that matter, Wipro exiting from the travel agency business, right? So non-core business exit, yes, very, very important trigger. What is the most obvious trigger? So I could hear a lady, so I'll come, yeah? Yeah? Grow with a growing organization, yes, I attach myself to, I grow with on the coattails, I hold the coattails of some other organization and grow along with them, yes. What else? Next generation not interested in the business, fantastic point. I mean, half of the transactions happens in India because the daughter has gone to Australia and is having wine, the son is only interested in driving fast cars, but not interested to go and deal with the technicians and the ITI grads in running and staffing business because it is painful. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, definitely Taurani's, Ramesh Chauhan's daughter, right? I think the first generation, when the initial thing was happening, Coca-Cola wanted to gobble up, that's the previous one, right? They wanted to gobble up Thumbs Up. That was the whole reason, right? It's another story that they could never gobble up Thumbs Up. Thumbs Up stayed a much better and more accepted brand than Coke. But post that, I think, again, I do not follow FMCG sector big time, but I think Ramesh Chauhan's daughter was trying to gain control and stuff like that, right? Please enlighten me on that. Yeah.
Then Coca-Cola tried, and somehow they succeeded. So Ramesh Chauhan's daughter, yes, you are right. She is very active, probably even today.
Yes.
Probably she might be regretting why they ever sold it. But I think what they thought was one reason, which I've seen in one other transaction as well, is they fear that they may not have the same value going further.
Absolutely. So, the fear, FOMO, what we call as FOMO right now was always there.
Yeah, right? so they thought they might not be able to withstand the competition from a Pepsi or a Coke, and that's why they sold it.
Absolutely. I mean, being not afraid, but again, see, this is like that. I have always, Art of War is one of those books which is good to talk about, but I'm sure it will be boring to read. Nobody on earth would have read, at least in this room, I can guarantee, like Arthashastra and Art of War. They're just good to go. We'll pick up one or two lines from Google and we can quote. But bottom line, sorry. So not fear of competition, but understanding competition. And again, aligning yourself with the right set of people. 100%.
But I feel, Jyotirmoy, and this is something I was very vocal about and had put a LinkedIn post as well. The biggest differentiator between the entrepreneurs in the West versus India, I feel they are very risk favorite, and we are very risk averse. How many Indian businesses do you think have scaled from starting small to a size that have made a global, created a global footprint? You'll find only very handful of Indian businesses doing that. And somewhere, I think the biggest of the issues there is the way our education curriculum is imparted, right? We as Indian curriculum system create a lot of good followers and actually very less number of risk favorite or risk liking entrepreneurs. Yeah, we are very risk averse. We don't take risk. So there was a nice photograph I'd seen which said a particular boy standing on the cliff, and then there is the picture where he falls from the cliff, right? And the quote read, if I read it correct, it was take the leap and find your wings on the way, right? How many of us in India do you think can do that? And just jump off the cliff and say, boss, I'll find my wings. I'll not fall down. I'll fly. Now that kind of risk-taking capability is not there in our country. And that has been the missing DNA. Why we get scared, we sell the businesses. Why we don't scale, we never, like number of outbound transactions that you think of it, right, in India. When I say outbound, the transactions which happen from India where the assets are based out of abroad, where Indian businesses buy businesses abroad. How many do you think in which spaces? If you were to do the math, right, it will mostly be in tech space, particularly to get into that geography. Or it might be in a product space where the Indian product, they're not able to sell directly. They want a partner who would help us sell the product there. But again, all big ticket names, all of them who have big private equity sitting in them who can advise. Indian business, can a guy say, for example, he started a bakery in Bangalore. Like we have Iyengar bakery, right? How many Iyengar bakeries are there? Imagine all Iyengars sit down together and say, boss, let's form a company together called Iyengar's Bakers Association and be the biggest of the bakers in India and take our product global. Have you ever thought of Iyengar's thinking this way? Never. We are happy competing with each other. My veg puff is better than your veg puff, boss. I get more footfall than you. Like, imagine the kind of mindset we are like quarreling among ourselves and never trying to even make a global footprint. I think that is the biggest of the DNA issues that we have in India. You're saying something?
That's where companies like Tata and in fact Wipro in Celent. One reason which I see for Celent is SAP is a German product. Celent is German. If you want to sell forget only in Germany, you want to sell in Europe, you can very well sell SAP from Germany. So that's one big point. And Tata acquiring JLR, that was one big thing where where we as an Indian company demonstrated that we can acquire a company, do it better than what you guys do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can a small guy think, okay, I'll go and acquire a big guy abroad? Like I'm doing a diligence on a company right now. I don't want to call the name out. They actually did this. Last year they went and acquired a company almost, if I were to be right, 8 times the revenue of their own revenue. And who?
Yeah, but having said that, Rahul, don't kill our.
I'm not killing it. See, it's
don't
about
kill our
see, we have
profession.
a lot of advisors here.
My income depends on the fact that
We
people
have
are
a lot of
slightly
advisors here who interact with businesses which are looking to scale,
Yeah.
which
No, I
want
was
to
just-
scale. Like, you know, how many of you have ever found 2 of your clients who can actually get together and do a better business than doing it separately?
Yeah.
Where you find, you know, they're competing with each other and actually doing price cuts in the market, and both of them are suffering, margins are thinning.
Yeah, yeah.
But while if they get together, they might actually create an organization where both the stakeholders, both the promoters of the companies might, profit. You'd see in your client base also, right? And how many of you have advised them that why don't you get together? Because that's the job Jyotirmoy does.
Yeah.
He keeps an eye, boss, these two are better partners than them being separated, lets them get it together. And I always say M&A is like marriage. You need a pandit, and he's the pandit who comes in and says, शादी कर लो. उसके बाद जो होगा देखा जाएगा, पर तुम शादी करो, तुम्हारे लिए अच्छा है. And all of us, like advisors, are the ones who come and eat food and go. Like you're saying, right, ये अपना पैसा बना के जाता है. All of us are like the ones who come and eat food and go. He's a pandit who sits and waits till the marriage is over because he needs to collect his
Pandit
dakshina and
without
go.
the dakshina which
and
keeps
go home.
coming in. Yeah, yeah.
And the
So
guys
it's
who get married
it's a
have to,
very-
you know, sort out for themselves all their life कि अच्छा होगा शादी करके कि बुरा होगा. It's your headache.
Yeah, yeah.
मैंने तो तुमको advice दी थी कि अच्छा होगा. And that's how it works. How many of you have ever found? I just want to call out. Have you guys found such businesses, or if you have such businesses, why haven't you connected the dots and said, boss, why don't you get together? Have you done that? I'm just asking anybody who's done that till now, who's connected two
When
dots.
you guys go and talk to you, did you?
And please feel free to share the example, because that will help a lot of you to make money also, right? And most of the transactions happen as a percentage. Imagine a 100 crore transaction. It typically is 1.5 to 2% of the whole transaction value that the bankers make, which is almost 1.5 to 2 crores, right? And imagine the kind of quantum of money that's lying on the table, which you can actually make in the process by just being the good advisor and connecting the dots.
And look, boss. I mean, one thing. Since
There's a case here,
I'm talking shop here very clearly. This is an audience for me, right? You guys know anybody? I'll tell you what. Anybody who's into healthcare IT, running healthcare IT services. Okay, there are various softwares like Viva, Shiva, etc. Anybody running that? Anybody running a healthcare BPO? Okay. Anybody running in engineering services, staffing? Okay. Let me know. I'll leave my anyways, any asset that is there in the range of anywhere above 30-40 crore in the technology services, technology and allied areas domain, just feel free to drop in an email. It is a very, it's a very transactional world. We share money with all and sundry because it is dependent on that. It's not like your typical risk engagement or a tax engagement wherein you need to sign something and you need to give a report, nothing like that. It's like basically making the thing work. It's all about making it work. So anybody of you, if you can come to me and tell me that I have an healthcare IT BPO asset where the promoters are willing to sell, I would absolutely, that is how any transactions begin. There is engagement letter and all are like secondary. I mean, this is a very different world than what otherwise we do. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll give a small example.
Yeah.
From our firm, a few days back, we helped 2 people get together. So there is one guy who is a bigger guy. They are into packaging. He was looking out for somebody who can manage his he has 2 legal entities. So both these legal entities, he was looking out for somebody who can manage this stuff. There was this one guy who was running short of funds, good at doing whatever he did, again in the same line of business. So what we did as a firm is we helped meet both of these guys. So there was a synergy. One guy needed the skill set to manage the whole business, and the other guy had the skills, but he didn't have the money or the wherewithal to take it further. So his smaller business, he merged into the bigger business, and then both had a win-win. So a small example, but a very brilliant.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how it works. So just to quickly say, one thing that nobody said, and that is again the most obvious answer. It is called Occam's razor. It's a principle that you follow in philosophy. The most obvious answer is usually the right one, and that is if you show the money to a seller, the seller will exit. Everything else, growth, like expansion, future, all that is correct. That is all, those are all causal variable, but the final effect is the money. If you can show, I'm sorry to say, but nothing too sorry to say, it's business. Every company has a price, including SpaceX and Apple. Right from my finance and accounting BPO, whom I am representing at a 50 crore level, sitting in a small office in Hyderabad, to the best of the silicon, SpaceX, everybody has a price. Everybody sells for a price. Show the right price, and that's where the exit matters, right? Everything is driven by exit. So tomorrow, not even an M&A, in a fundraise transaction, rest of it is story. The climax, the rest of it is all courtship, story, etc. The climax of any transaction is always an exit. So tomorrow when you do a fundraise, why would Axel invest money in let's say, a network, you know this enterprise networks, right? All the computers on the enterprise. Let's say there is some, I'll give an example. Let's say I'll give an example. Let's say there's some data center asset. So let's say Axel will never invest in a data center business. Why? You have data centers, right? So many data. Will an Axel, a Sequoia, these are the big names in the funding space, in the technology funding space. SoftBank. Will SoftBank invest in a company which has got many data centers? Will they invest? What do you think? Just wild guess. Yes, no. How many yes? SoftBank will invest in a data center. How many no? I have already said no, so no. Okay, no. Why not? Any guess? Any guess? Why SoftBank will not invest in a data center ever? You know what data centers are, right? Where all your programs, all your computer, everything is running. Airtel phone, iPhone, everything is running. The data is sitting somewhere. Right? They will not buy because data center requires you to invest millions and millions of dollars to earn that first $1 of revenue. Why? I would rather write a software code for data center and earn 10 times more than that, right? So, which translates into the fact that who will buy this data center? I mean, it's finally buying, it's like when you have, I don't know, okay, for me, when you have some great bong sweets, Langcha or Roshogolla next to me, then I am doing with some random, I don't know what, something else, okay? So, everything is relative. So, exit is primarily important. If you can show a path to exit, that is the end game of any financial transaction. So, show the money. I'll come to now a quick here. So, there are two kinds of transaction primarily. There is primary transaction, there is secondary transaction. Primary is where the money gets into the company. That is where the funding transactions will have a primary. Funding essentially means primary. Whereas secondary means you are buying the shareholders out. The money is going to the shareholders' pocket. Eventually, every transaction should go to a secondary, but a large number of transactions, especially the ones which are funding, goes. So, they are the money. So, in a primary transaction, technically speaking, you are issuing new shares, issuing new instruments. In a secondary transaction, you are buying shares. In a primary, I said I do not know anything, so I'll try my luck. In a primary transaction, you do those pass 3, 4, whatever. In the secondary transaction, you do SH4. So, so share transfer happens there. Now, let's take a quick detour. I'll just quickly finish a couple of things because we are running short of time. Rahul will kill me. Okay, I'll just do a quick case study. There's this company called the Red Lion Technologies. I was talking about data center, so it provides enterprise software. Just chuck that part. It provides some enterprise software, data center software. the founder owns completely. The revenue in the current year is USD 0.5 million. Then the first year was 0.5 million. Then second year it was 3 million. Now, as of now, we are standing on third year where the revenue estimate is 10 million. They are already doing a good annual run rate, ARR. You will hear it often, right? ARR of close to 10 million, which means that they will attain 10 million very soon. And then the fourth year projection is 20. This year they are going to break even, and next year they are going to make 25%, 20%, 25% EBITDA, right? Given this, my pre-money cap table, this means pre-money. No funding has happened. The promoter is bootstrapped into the company. It has all been his money. So he owns 100%. It looks like this. No further money has gone into the company. Okay? After that, now revenue is USD 5 million. Tell me, in this scenario, can I do in my first year, can I do a valuation based on EBITDA? Yes? How many yes? How many yes? No yes. So which means all of us know, I don't need to say. We cannot do a valuation based on EBITDA because it's negative EBITDA, right? So which means, I mean, see, finally all these 5x and all, when the companies are small, those all are fab. Okay, it is always working backwards. I will pay 5 million. You want to take? Take. Don't want to take? Don't take. I will justify it to my share. I have to write something in the fund has to write something in their annual report, right? They will say we provided a 5x multiple. I will give you 20 companies where the multiple have been 5x of revenue. If they would have decided to pay 15, they were desperate to do the transaction. I will give another 20 companies where the multiple have been 10x of revenue. So it is all subjective. It is all a matter of how desperate either of the two parties are, right? Coming to the technicality of it, here the pre-money valuation we have assumed would be 5x of revenue, which means it is 5 million. Now they have infused a seed capital of 1 million. The meaning of post-money is 5 million is the inherent value of the company. Based on whatever, it can be based on revenue, EBITDA, founders, how good looking the founder is, doesn't matter. It can be based on anything. But after that I am putting $1 million in cash. So the company's value is now becoming founders' good looks, 5 million, 1 million of cash, 6 million. $6 million, that is called the post-money valuation. And calculation, since I have put, somebody is an investor, the investor has put $1 million of that 6 million. So the investor share is 1 divided by 6, which is 17%. I hope this is a very simple calculation. That's all there to it. Okay. Now, let's look at year 3. What can happen in year 3? Now, sorry, this is not post-money. The first one is pre-money cap table, the typo. My associate Dave was making this at 4 o'clock in the morning today, so this much is okay. So, pre-money cap table, 17% is held by the fund, 83% is held by the founder. Now, the founder will say, boss, nahi, mujhe previous year ka revenue mein I don't want to value. I have already shown my growth trajectory. You have to value me on my forward multiple. Again, theoretically speaking, a forward multiple for the same company, given the concept of ceteris paribus, everything else being constant, will always be, always be what as compared to the spot current multiple? The forward multiple would always be higher. Forward multiple will always be higher, or is it lower? Value will be higher, multiple can remain same. Why value would be higher? Mathematically, how value can be higher if multiple is the same? You expect more profit. Any other thought? The key here is you expect more profit. So it's like, think of a perfect market where the information is perfect. There is a perfect symmetry of information. Everything is predictable, right? If I am saying I am going to get 20 million next year, okay, so now let's think of a scenario. You are a VC, Okay? You are a VC, she is a VC. Okay? I go to you, I show you the same projection. My this year is 10 million, my next year is 20 million. Right? I have projected. I tell her, no, you give me multiple same. The existing multiple is 7. Okay? Give me a value of 7 multiplied by 20 because next year I am going to, so you give me 140 million value. And I go to you and says, give me 7 multiplied by 10, 70. How does the two things happen simultaneously? Can it happen? The point is, the multiple or the discounted cash flow. Multiple is basically nothing but a derived number of the so-called discounted cash flow. Somebody is doing a discounted cash flow at some point in time, which nobody does, because somebody would have done it, then somebody would have copied that money. Nobody does DCF, but if you do a discounted cash flow, the multiple is a derivation of that. And it will already take into account this future promise of 20 that I am talking about. And that's why you are adding a discount layer of underneath is in the denominator, right? You are discounting that. So when you come to that, if nothing else changes in the company, the value of the company would have been the same in the beginning. The value of the company should be the same now. The value of the company should be the same next year because I've already taken that into account. In real life, it never happens because once you prove that I have already attained this, you don't say that I will sit on this trajectory only and move and nothing else, right? So which comes to mathematically, if I am using a forward multiple, would my forward multiple be higher or lower as compared to my current multiple? Lower, because my company is the same. Whatever value is the same. The time at which we are discussing this is the same. So if I am giving a 7 multiplied by 10, 70, okay? And next year I am doing 20, let's say. What would be my forward multiple be? 70 divided by 20, because the value would finally go to 70 only because nothing has changed. Am I clear here? If I'm not, I'll again repeat. The value of the company, forget this one. The pre-money valuation of the company is 70. This is the inherent value of the company, okay, as on date, today. How much revenue I am doing? How much? 10 million. 10 million revenue. What is my revenue multiple? Sorry? 7, right? Nothing has changed for the company. Everything, it is a concept called, it's a standard concept, everything else being constant, ceteris paribus in economics, right? That being there, 1.5 years down the line, the same, I had projected. Now, the guy who has valued my company at 70, he would have done some discounted cash flow, right? He would have taken that 20 million, whatever projection you have done into account. Now we are standing at the same place. But right now I have done a 15 million revenue. If everything else is constant, what is my implied multiple now? Sorry? Valuation will be the same, 70. 70 divided by? I said 15, okay, 20, let's 70 divided by 20, whatever, 3.5, correct? Because my valuation remains the same. But, so that's why, standing right now, as on today, if I have to give a forward multiple, the forward multiple will always be lower than the current multiple, so that the valuation remains the same. But in real life, what happens? When you attain that 20, would you say that, no, I am very generous, I am very magnanimous, I don't need any further money? Obviously, you will up your projection more. And you will say, boss, when you are saying that you had done it at 7 multiple, you benchmarked it against companies. No, you didn't benchmark it in companies who were exactly at 10 million. Okay? You would have benchmarked against companies which are 5 million also, which are 100 million also. So now that I am 20 also, you give me 7. So your valuation in the next round increases. So coming to this example, in this particular scenario, let's say I say that, no, I am the owner. I don't want to value my company at 10 million is gone. Last year I achieved. I am talking about 20. I am already at an annual run rate of 17. Annual run rate means this month, let's say 18. This month I have done 1.5 million. So 1.5 multiplied by 12 is 18, right? 18 mil. 18 mil is my run rate. So you give me 20k upar mein boss valuation. And then they will negotiate and we'll come to the 3.5x. So now my valuation is 3.5x multiplied by multiplied by 20, which comes to 70 million. Now I go to an investor and say that invest 20 million in me. Now what is my post-money valuation? 90. My pre-money is 70, which is the value of the company before the new cash comes in. My post-money is 70 plus 20. Now when the new investor comes in, what will happen? Two people will dilute. Unless and until there is an anti-dilution clause of the first investor, and there are nuances to it, there are ratchet dilution and linear dilution. Unless and until the first investor who had come in and said that, no, irrespective, till the time you attain a $100 million valuation, you will not dilute me, I will still stay at 22%. Then you will have to, so then you cannot issue normal equity, you have to issue convertibles because you cannot issue equity for free because their number of shares has to go up, right? Anyways, bottom line, both the parties will get diluted. So my new cap table will look like 13% of the original fund, which was holding 17%, they got diluted to 13. The second fund, which has come in, put in $20 million, 20 divided by 90, simple, 20 divided by 90, 22%, and the rest is held by the promoters. Third, what can happen in year 3? Exit. Too much mathematics. Bottom line, if now an exit happens, so exit can happen in fundamentally, okay, I leave IPO aside. If there is a strategic exit, if somebody else comes and buys you guys, then exit can happen in two ways. One is a straight up deal. I pay you money, you give me ownership of the company, matter over, do some transition, over. The best form of deal making is that. No jhanjat, no gitch pitch, no shareholders agreement maramari, who's going to control what, etc. Simple, okay? You do transition and you get it done and over with. But 99% of the transaction has an earn-out component. Even in earn-out, the devil lies in the detail, right? I can fix the valuation today. I can say your company's value is 100 million. But I will only give you 60% of it. I'll give you 60 mil. So if I give you 60 million of that 100, and I say that for you to get that entire 100, what do you have to do? You have to achieve those targets that your valuation is dependent on what target you have set for you, the business plan that you have given me. If you don't attain the target, my DCF doesn't support that valuation, 100. So you have to, so 100 is the valuation keeping in mind the fact that you will do 100 million in revenue. If you do 120, we'll give you some extra. That's a different thing. So that's the, but a very favorable structure, however, and that is where the banker comes in, right? If I am a buy side, I will say this is the logic. If I am a sell side, I will say, boss, that is not the logic. You have bought my company. You have bought 60% of my company. I have been trying to, now it is upon you. Still then, I have helped you to attain those targets. I would have done things differently had I been left alone. So I am not responsible for it. Today I sold the company when I am standing at 60 million. Tomorrow my projection says 100, but you have bought it, no. So that reality doesn't exist, it's a hypothesis. So then, 100 million na, mere ko wapas se 100 million mein valuation karo. Do me nada. So then what happens? So then my first valuation is at 100 mil, which is at a 60 ka revenue. That means it's a revenue multiple of 1.8 or whatever, something like that, right? The moment I attain 100 mil, maybe I will not get 1.8, but I will say I will need 1.2. So my new valuation will become 120 mil. So the rest 40%, I will not sell it at 100, I will sell it at 120. So my effective valuation will be 60 that I have got from the first tranche, and then 40% of 120, 36, right? 40% of 120, how much is 48? 108 million. So my effective valuation is no longer 1x, it is 1.08x of revenue. So I have increased that. So that's how you negotiate. I mean, you can play it this way also, that way also, this also, that also phenomena. I'll quickly move. How much do I have? 10 minutes? We have 5 minutes. Let's go to the cycle. Yeah, I'll just go to the cycle. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, quickly. I will leave all this aside. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, Rahul, I didn't realize. Okay, I will not go too much into this. We have already spoken about this. Any business the identification is the key, as I said. Otherwise, you are the jockey, you are the better. If you put your bet in the wrong horse or riding the wrong horse, you will be left holding the bag. Somebody, Rahul will come and take his money, Rajarama will take, you'll get nothing. So you have to bear that. So some of the things that you need to see is that how much is the TAM? TAM stands for total addressable market. So why I said Donald Duck is not a, if you're a brand which sells jeans, Donald Duck is not your TAM. Why? Because he doesn't wear any pants, right? So जो पैंट ही नहीं पहनता वो jeans तो नहीं पहनेगा. On the other hand, then you have Sam. Sam is more focused. How many jeans are sold in India? How many denim items are sold? There are people who don't wear denims. So that is not my serviceable addressable market. Then you have SOM, obtainable market, serviceable obtainable market. How much of market I can really get? So bulk of the M&A or a fundraise process is all about this, showcasing that the market is so good, so awesome, so growing, etc. But please keep one thing in mind, all this theory goes for a complete toss if we do not have the buyer or an anchor buyer or an anchor fund in place. So you can do all the theory of this market is good, but finally, as I said, right, nobody touches staffing. 2%, 3% margin. But I have a damn good relationship with a staffing company where the promoter loves me and gives all the deals to me because I have built that, right? So it doesn't matter whether it is 5% margin or 2% margin business. The transactions that they do are in 300, 400 crore, I'll still make my money. So if you do not have so any transaction in the beginning of the transaction, if you do not have a person who is going to pay the money, then it is like Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. Hamlet was the Prince of Denmark. So I said that, okay, I'll not get too much into it, but this is a super important step. It is called making the information memorandum and business plan. Information memorandum means the entire, what they say, right, the kundli of the company. Everything should come. So what should come? What is the core offering? What is the quality of revenue? Predictability. See, you can, I'll give an example. Let's say that SAP example, right? SAP, once you start implementing in a company, it will run for another 10 years. It will never get over. So 10 years, if you have got, and they will never be able, they will not be able to throw SAP out, they will not be able to throw the service provider out. So if you have got into the company which is doing SAP implementation once, they can get married in the company, have kids, the kids can be part of the company, it will stay, the business will keep coming, nothing is going to go away. So revenue predictability is very important. Similarly, scalability, quality of customers. What kind of customers? Are these customers somebody where I can land with one service and extend 10 other services? Those things matter in your year. So all these things should come under information memorandum. And why I said it's a Clark Kent and Superman? Because what you are saying qualitatively in an information memorandum, which is the Clark Kent, comes out in the business plan, which is the Superman, or other way around. Like the same side. One is the qualitative part, one is the quantitative part. These two are the most important part of a documentation that you do. And you spend good amount of time with the promoters to create these two things. I will not go here. From a valuation standpoint, I have said that so couple of things on valuation. Rahul, just allow me 5 minutes more, and we are done. Sorry. So one is in valuation, there is valuation is the core of negotiation. And there are factors, right? I said nobody will sit and do a DCF. You can put whatever, but at the end of the day, what you're going to do? The market multiple is 7. Why you should be 8 and not 6? That's an argument that you as a banker have to give. As simple as that. You have to give examples, whatever. That's number one. Number two, you can fight on the multiple, or you can fight on what is the base number. I will say, if I am the seller, I will say my EBITDA, I'll give this quickly. Okay, I will say my revenue, EBITDA, whatever, you can see gross margin, this, that, etc. My EBITDA is 1.5 million. But I would say, guys, no, my EBITDA is not 1.5 million. I have spent 250K on product development, which I did not capitalize. I expensed it off. I should not, I am the promoter, I can do whatever I want to do. I wanted to build a space shuttle to Mars. I decided to spend 250K. It got nothing to do with the business. So the business can sustain at an EBITDA which is higher than 1.5. So you add back the 250K. Promoter expense, I have spent 200K with a trip to, along with my family when I was going for a business development meeting. That has come in the company's books. It happens. So then that has been expensed off, but that is not a part of tomorrow, that is not a part to run or sustain the business. So that needs to be added back. So the other fight that you as a banker do with the due diligence guys is that you fight it on the basis of what the base number should be and not just the multiple. I'll quickly finish the last part, which is, so finally, when DD happens, after that DD will happen, you'll get a term sheet, you'll get an LOI, you'll sign the LOI, a DD will happen. In the DD, there are more or less what you fight on is how much is the sustainability of revenue and EBITDA. The DD guys will say, the sell side, not the vendor DD, the buy side DD will say, this is a one-time revenue, this is a spike, it will not be there next year, I will not pay you value for that. They will try to deduct it. We will say no, it is going to, whatever. So it's a very subjective to and fro that will happen. Second is net debt adjustment. What could come under net debt? One is simple and straight part of net debt is that, okay, take whatever is long-term, short-term loans. But what about if there is a gratuity payment that is yet to be done? I'm sure those gratuity calculations are done, right, by actuaries and so on. Let's say it has not been done this year. The other party will say, yeah?
I think the bigger question also is why EBITDA?
Yeah.
Why net debt? Why working capital? And that's something that we are also going to be covering
about
about 10-15 minutes in depth. As to why, like you would have seen all of the calculations Jyotirmoy presented were hovering around EBITDA. Truly, why is EBITDA as a representative, right? Most of the P&Ls that you would have all put together and signed off also goes up to PAT, right? Now, but why do we stop in a transaction at EBITDA? Why don't we look at items below EBITDA? There is a reason behind it, and there's a concept, like a proper science behind it. And also, what is net debt? Net debt is nothing but total debt on the book, right? You know, what is your total borrowings versus the cash, the net amount. It can be net cash or net debt. And then there are many more exposures and liabilities which typically do not form part of working capital that go into net debt. But what is the implication of net debt in a transaction? Because at the end of the day, money is going to be exchanged, right? And thirdly, working capital. Now, working capital is a standard definition. All of us have learned current assets minus current liabilities. Typically, cash is included as part of current assets, right, in our accounting definition. But in a transaction, cash is never part of working capital. It is kept out. Now, what is the logic behind it? All of these we'll be covering in the first 15-20 minutes in the next session.
So I'll just finish it off. My only thing is that after that you have a definitive agreement which is mostly done by the lawyers, but we play a role in doing that. And then the signing and the closure. If the signing happens, you uncork the champagne. If it doesn't happen, then you're poorer, so you uncork a bottle of Old Monk and drown your sorrows. But that's overall how the transaction structure works. Sorry, Rahul, sorry, gentlemen, for taking more time. I really didn't realize that so much time has passed. I hope I was of some value, and at least more importantly, I was not boring. As long as that is achieved, I am fine with it. Thank you so much for your patience and time. Sorry.
Members will break for tea and reassemble in 10 minutes.
But I'll give you a process view of the M&A life cycle. Where does due diligence come in? Then I'll be joined by Rajarama, who in fact is in our world a lot of due diligences. His concept clarity and his understanding of due diligence is supreme. One of the best due diligence folks that I've met. And we'll cover subjects with the concept behind it, because due diligence is a very open and broad area. It applies your operational understanding of a business, accounting understanding of a business, and M&A understanding of a business. So you have to apply all the three to complete a due diligence. So we might not be able to go into the depths that is required for you to be able to deliver a good due diligence exercise, but we'll give you the spirit of it as to what is it that a due diligence exercise involves, what's the logic and concept behind it, so that tomorrow when you get an opportunity to work with your clients for a due diligence or support them for a due diligence exercise, you at least know what is being sought and why it's being sought and how to think about it. So we'll get started now. So overall M&A process, right? And this is the life cycle, I just wanted to highlight. So it starts with shaping the strategy and to identify the deal. What is shaping the strategy? Like no M&A is done without having a strategic outlook to do an M&A, right? Which can be either of the vertical integration, the horizontal mergers, or it can be consolidation, diversification, just a fundraise, for instance, entering a new geography. There has to be a strategic requirement for one business want to do a M&A transaction and find the business too which will fit into that strategic outlook. That is where typically the investment bankers come in and the corporate M&A teams come in. We'll check. I'll get this cleared and share. So that is where the M&A strategy of a company comes in. That is where the bankers get involved. That is where the corporate. You would have heard of this, team called corporate development sitting out of all the big corporate houses, right? Their role is typically to find assets that can get you an inorganic growth. I hope we understand the difference between organic and inorganic growth. Right? I don't need to go into that path. Now, inorganic growth can be a good driver for you for business to scale. You can enter newer geographies through acquiring companies. You can get into newer product portfolio of yours through inorganic growth. But that strategy, that why do we need to do it, is very important. In fact, a couple of months back, I was running a workshop. It was a 5-day workshop on M&A for one of the biggest of India's auto OEMs. And because they wanted to somewhere drive a startup insight into their commercial heads and the CFOs. And imagine a room filled with about 70 to 80 CFOs who were trying to come up with a strategy because each of them were running their own business units, commercial units. No, they were not even trying to play synergies between themselves, nor even trying to find synergies outside their purview to be able to make inorganic growth coming. Now that's where the M&A strategy becomes very important aspect. A lot of boards discuss it, a lot of corporate development teams discuss it, and that's where the bankers come in. Most of the bankers typically are the ones who help businesses identify the spots where inorganic growth can come in, which takes you to the next step of target screening. Like how do you identify this is the right target, right? Which is what Jyotirmoy is calling out. Like for example, Wipro. Why did Wipro feel that Senate is the right company to buy? Like why did Zomato think Uber Eats is the right company to buy? Why did Tata actually peg its bets on say Big Basket and not Zepto or Blinkit? Why did Zomato buy Blinkit? Why did Zomato not buy Zepto? Like all of these questions, right? How do you identify which target will fit in well? And that involves a lot of aspects. And the core of the aspects are the people. Like everything else becomes secondary. It becomes a clear aspect of people. It's like, again, I'll go back to my reference to a marriage, right? Okay, then that if ladka ladki razi to kya karega kazi. Now that is how it works. Like if the promoter of group 1 gets that particular chemistry with the promoter of group 2, they know that they can work it out, and that is where the M&A transactions actually happen. Where two people can believe in the same purpose and try to get together to make the business scale. It can be acquisition, it can be merger, but in essence it is people driven. And identifying the target actually means identifying the right founders who can make a good fit for the team, plus also the business that makes sense. It's not just about people alone, it's about also the money that comes in. That is where once a strategy is set, once a target is found, is where the investors typically or the acquirers typically reach out to multiple of their vendors to help them with the process of due diligence. I will keep this what is due diligence subject also on pause. We'll do this discussion next. And once a due diligence is done, a lot of inputs are provided by the due diligence teams across different segments to provide insights into what should be taken care of in a transaction execution and deal structuring. Now, transaction execution and deal structuring, I would call out only 2 things right now, and that is something that we'll discuss today also, is one, the documentation. There is an agreement which is signed off by both the parties, and a lot of inputs are given into that agreement so that when it gets signed off, it does not have any call outs or open items over there. It is watertight to avoid any disputes in the future period. I hope marriages also had some kind of an agreement where disputes could be avoided, but unfortunately not. If not for that, M&A transaction, one of the key things that says M&A is concluded is just signing off on that agreement. And what is it that should be sitting in that agreement? One is a standard format that the lawyers have, but there are so many inputs that go in from different teams, wherein the buyers cover their own risks and the seller cover their own risks to create a balanced win-win situation kind of a agreement, where the agreement then becomes like a dispute proof and creates at least a healthy relationship to get into. And the second is how much price do they pay to each other. So those are two aspects in transaction execution that we will cover. How much price do you pay? How do you come to that price? One part is valuation. But with the valuation, you'll probably arrive at the enterprise value of the business, right? That discounted cash flow methodology will give us the enterprise value of the business. But what you're buying is equity. So there are some adjustments that are made to the enterprise value, which is again a subject that we'll touch upon. And once the deal is done, the next most important thing was, how do we actually transform and create a value out of this new business, which is getting together and then getting performed, where the post-merger integration piece comes in as to once you're merged or you're acquired, how do you integrate that business into your, because you cannot be looking like two separate businesses in the market. There are many case studies which have happened where PMI has failed, where for the same project, the holding company and subsidiary company both have gone and pitched at different price points. Imagine a customer who is a common customer, same kind of an industry. The holdco had gone and made a pitch for $1 million contract, and the same contract, same scope of work, the subsidiary has gone and pitched for $2 million. The question that the customer has asked is, both of you are part of the same group, same scope of work, same kind of effort base, then are you trying to cheat me by offering? So imagine the kind of integration that needs to be done, be it sales, be it processes, be it finance, across all the different segments where you need to look like one, you have to behave like and be actually one. So that's the overall life cycle of a transaction that I just wanted to call out. Now we'll deep dive into due diligence as a subject, and I'll ask Rajaram to run it, and I'll keep pitching in.
Thanks, Rahul. Now, first question, like we all discussed about where the due diligence comes in the whole M&A cycle. Now, like, why do we need diligence? Anyone? If anyone wants to come in? Okay. Right. 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 So you want to check the accuracy? That's right. That's right. Anyone else? That's right. You want to know more about the company or asset which you are trying to acquire, right? Sorry? Exit. Okay. So that's a point which is obviously in everybody's mind, but that is like more like a part of the strategy. Like in terms of when you are entering, when you can exit is a point of at the time of strategy itself you have decided, not at the time of diligence. But diligence can also kind of throw up something. That's right. That's right. Tax. Facts. That's right. That's right. See, one of the things is, understanding any valuable insight into the operations of the company, as you said. So because we, see, as Jyotirmoy explained, when we actually initially set the conversation going for any M&A or the fundraising activity, the buyer will start with the, information memorandum shared by the seller or their advisors, or they'll have a seller's model. Obviously, it will all show very rosy picture, right? So, I mean, everything, it's a seller, right? Seller's offer is always great. And as a buyer, you need to always be cautious, and you need to know what is there in it and how, whether the operations of the company which you are trying to acquire or where you are going to invest, whether it is in line with what they have claimed in the information memorandum or the rosy picture which they are projecting in their business model. Second important item is identifying potential opportunities and problems. Like, see, obviously as a seller, nobody is going to tell the whole lot of problems which they are facing in their businesses or in their finances, accounting, or whatever it could operationally, whatever could be the segments. So they may not openly tell. Some people may, some may not. So as a prudent buyer, one has to actually review the company's books, financials, operations, etc., and try to understand what is there in it. And if there are, it could also throw up certain opportunities which maybe the seller also has not seen. That is also possible. You might be actually be able to see more value than what the seller has claimed in his, because you may have certain inherent assets or advantages in your side, which you may be able to leverage when you buy that asset on the other side. Third, resolving issues before they threaten the deal. So, it is one thing, when we start the discussion, we may not know all the facts, but once we start going into the, details, granularity, we will come to know, okay, there are certain things which are there. Some of the risks which may be, possible to address easily. Some of the risks we may need to deal in certain different way, or certain kind of, some mitigation steps may need to be taken, etc. So we need to have to first address the problem. You need to know what is the problem. So how do you identify it? Maybe because you have to do the detailed diligences of different nature. You will find out the problems first. Then structuring and valuing the transaction. So this is again one important aspect. By doing the due diligence, one would know what are the kind of issues faced or opportunities there, and how best to maximize the value and minimize the risks by structuring the deal. Structuring meaning, it could be from a tax point of view, legal standpoint of view, etc. So point is, you need to maximize the value for the both sellers and buyers in such a way that the shareholder value increases. And valuation again is touched upon. The inputs from the diligence would help in the valuation as well. So the initial valuation at the non-binding term sheet level to the actual culmination of the deal, it could vary depending upon the various inputs gathered from the diligences. The fifth point is a continuation of this certain items may not necessarily result in the value adjustment, but in some cases the items identified may result in value adjustments in the purchase price. Determining future financing strategies. So, how you want to fund the acquisition is also an important aspect. Once we know the actual, say, the financials of the company, the cash flows, future projections, or the current leverage which the company has, etc., you may be able to see if there is a further opportunity to kind of, maximize the leverage at the company level, so that your infusion into the company can be minimized, etc. So this is again, it will help once you know the full understanding of the finances of the company. It will help, planning for the financing. And lastly, identifying operational area where you can concentrate. So basically, there are certain issues which have to be addressed pre-deal itself, because you need to. It could be an item which needs to be factored in the valuation, or it could be factored in the transaction documents. But there are certain items which okay, this is not a immediate concern for me, but it's an item nevertheless to be addressed at some point in time post the deal. So you will also park certain areas like that, which will be taken post the deal. After deal is closed, you will still address these few points which you have noted, so that the integration becomes seamless, and the value which you have planned or projected is actually realized. So these are some of the points which will help in realizing that. So just to put all in substance, the primary role of the diligence is to see if there are any big black holes, there are deal breakers, if there are any. Because if at that stage, if it is identified, you can save a lot of money instead of investing a big money, and you can actually save yourself. Your only loss is the cost of diligence and maybe few other initial amount which you have spent. Because if you go ahead and invest, sometimes it can be very, very costly affair. So it can be a situation where you are able to identify upfront itself. Or it could be the issues where you are able to kind of address it or mitigate, or you take a conscious decision commercially you know this issue, but you are ready to kind of go ahead still and go ahead and make the investment or acquisitions. Now, as I mentioned, how the diligence, what kind of diligence one has to do, it has to be based on what you have thought about when you actually went into that discussion in the first place. because as we saw in some of the examples which Jyotirmoy presented earlier, the why certain company has gone and targeted another company A goes to company B, why we don't know, because they may have certain specific requirements which aligns with their objectives, right? So one, we need to know what is the a buyer looking for in acquiring that particular company or asset. So then once you know what is driving that value, whatever value he is ready to give to that company, a seller, effectively driven by certain things. So what are those 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number of key areas which they are seeing the value, that we should know. Once you know and the buyer is able to identify, okay, to validate these items, we need to go ahead and check the financials, operations, IT, various other things. So what is required to be validated, determined by the value drivers, which is determining the purchase price considerations. So now in terms of coming to coverage, so what all types of diligences one can do or one can see in the M&A activities. The first and foremost, of course, financial diligence is a bread and butter. It is there in almost all the deals. Tax, again, without saying anything, tax is a quite complicated subject. Everybody wants to get a view and confirmation on the tax compliances and the implications. Operational diligence, again, very important, especially from an M&A point of view. It's very, very important because operationally one has to see whether it how compatible their businesses are with the acquiring business, etc. Technical diligence, information technology, HR, risk management, forensic. At times it may be required, forensic. Actually, I would say forensic maybe, you can, maybe a slightly varied version of forensic, I would say. Most of the private equities or, they may not know which company when they are investing, they may not know much about the promoters, their background, etc. So one of the things which many of the private equities or venture capitalists do is that they actually run a discrete background checks about the promoters. So these are kind of carried out through forensic experts or the people who give the background check verification services. So through them they do it. So it's very important because you need to know with whom you are doing the business, right, at the end of the day. Especially in a fundraising case, it becomes very, very critical because you are just a financial investor and going, and letting the promoter manage the business. So you need to know with whom you are doing the business, what is their credentials, what is their background, etc. Lastly, legal. Nothing can be less important. It's like this is the most important aspect again from the diligence point of view. In all of this, you will see almost every M&A activity will see financial, tax, and legal is a staple. It's there in almost all the M&A activities done, definitely. Rest of the things, it is taken up based on the need basis and the requirements. And some of these things may be it's done through the advisors who are experts in this field. In some cases, they may have themselves, they may have a lot of expertise to do themselves. Like say, for instance, technical or operations, right? I'll just give an example. If NTPC is acquiring another power plant or the producer, they don't need anybody else to come and give them the advice on the operations or technical DD because they themselves are the masters. They manage the maximum number of power plants in the country. They know in and out of it, so they don't need anybody else else to come and advise them on that aspect. They will do it. This diligence happens, but they'll do it themselves internally, not really outsourced or given to advisors outside. Similarly, requirement of the technology, HR, etc. It depends on the need and what is the criticality of that particular function that will determine whether the diligence, separate diligence is required or not. As we discussed in the previous slide as well, the key output of all the diligences is to identify and validate the deal valuation and inputs structure, identify the synergies and identify the risks, inputs for the deal agreements, and then finally develop negotiation leverage. Now, after getting all the diligence inputs from various diligences, whether it's financial, tax, legal, operations, etc., so you compile all the diligence issues, whichever you noted, It could be positive, negative, whatever, mainly negative from that point of view, because you want to address them in some form or the other as a buyer. So you'll put it into any of these any 4 buckets. The first one is deal breaker. Have I identified anything which is going to kill this deal, which is like non-negotiable for me? I am not ready to take this risk anymore. This is a no-go for me, and then I'll close the deal. If you find this, the deal closes there itself. Second bucket is issues which are going for the agreements. Agreements, when I say, it's like share subscription agreement or share purchase agreement or a business transfer agreement or whatever those, depending upon the nature of the transaction. So now here, you may have identified certain big exposures in tax, or you may have identified certain big contingent liabilities as part of the diligence. Now, how will you address that? So there may be a mechanism for indemnity. So I don't know, anybody here understands what indemnity is? Indemnity? It's a legal term, but you would have come across this term many times. Sorry? Making good the losses. Yes. Anyone else? See, indemnity is basically you are taking the indemnity from the seller, and wherein you have identified certain potential risk areas, and then you want to tell the seller that I am ready to buy the business, but subject that tomorrow if this risk comes and materializes, you are going to make good that loss for me, because I am not going to buy this asset or a business without you giving me the backup. So indemnity is like some kind of an insurance from a seller, wherein he is committing legally that if this risk materializes on a later date, they will come and make it good. So issues in agreements could be some other things as well, like certain things called conditions precedent and conditions subsequent. Anybody is aware of this term or these terms in the diligence or in general any of the agreements? Are you familiar with the terms? Sorry? That's right. That's right. So as part of the diligence, we would have identified certain risks or certain areas. Some of the things which we feel that it can be completed. Say, for instance, I'll give an example. Somebody has not filed the tax returns. Let us take an example, right? But it is easily rectifiable, right? And as a buyer, I don't want to get into this problem. I will before the deal closes and I sign it on it, you please rectify this. It's things. It could be simple things like that. I am saying that there could be many more such things, like say certain important contract with the customer. Say it has expired, and that they will say no, this is regularly renewable. It's fine. We will get it renewed. But you don't want to take the chance. Maybe the customer is a big customer which is contributing 10-20% of your revenue, and you don't want to take a chance tomorrow. If that customer is not there, your business is as good as not there. So you want to say, now okay, now I am ready to sign this deal, but you have time. Within this time, you get this renewed and show me the proof. So then only the deal is considered as done. So I'm just giving an example. So there will be condition subsequent. So what is condition subsequent? So these are items which you have identified again as a things to do. We need that to be done, but may not be that critical for me to go and hold the deal. I am ready to let go at this stage, but this is an identified item, and after deal is closed, I'll give you certain timeline within 4 months, 6 months, whatever is agreed time frame. Within that activity is completed, and condition subsequent generally happens in a situations where in a funding transaction only, where the promoter is still continuing in the business, right? In case of M&A, there is nothing like condition subsequent generally, because whatever you have to do it before the seller exits, right? So you have to do it. But in a fundraising transaction, this can happen, because that promoter still has a skin in the game. He has to run it, he has to manage it, etc. You are ready to give that runway for that person to set right the things even after the deal is done. And other important things here in the issue which can be addressed in the agreement is warranties. Again, anybody aware of what is warranty here? Warranties. That is from the product point of view. That is different. And here it is. We are talking from a the deal point of view. So what is the warranty? Yeah. So I mean, not so much about the future. Say for instance, I'll tell you you say that my I have complied with all the say employee labor laws and regulations, okay, or one guy says, okay, I have I have disclosed to you all the contingent liabilities to you, okay, and you have a list of items which is listed. So tomorrow if it comes that actually they have hidden certain things which was not disclosed to you, and that in the agreements you will have certain things like warranties. Warranties, if you are breached, which means that you can actually, the buyer can actually go and sue the seller and saying that this was a breach of warranty, and they can claim damages. So warranty, while all these are legal things, but it can be identified, certain diligence items like we can identify and get a specific warranty from the sellers, so that you have some bit of protection. While I know it's all a legal battle one has to fight, but there are certain areas which can give some kind of at least legal protection for us by doing this. Sorry. Third bucket here is valuation and negotiation points, which we already touched upon. So there will be many issues which will be identified through various diligences. Which may have an impact on the value. So which you don't want to kind of keep it in the indemnity or other things, and you want to straight away adjust because you know that this is an identified risk. I am not ready to pay any value for this particular item. I am going to adjust the value straight away. So those are the items which will come under this category. Some of these items also could be negotiated because as Jyotirmoy was showing in his slide, so promoter will say, no, this particular item I want to, it's not incurred for the business, it is just personal expense, etc. And you want to validate it. It may be a negotiation point, or you as a buyer, you have identified certain items which is this is like, say for instance, I'll say this revenue is not recurring revenue, I will not give any value. The profit from this I will not consider. But the other side may have some other justification or counter. So it will be a negotiation point, so which will eventually be settled based on the discussions. And the last bucket is commercial override, wherein the certain issues have been identified through the diligence, but as a buyer you are ready to take that risk, or knowingly you are taking the risk. So here the acquirer has the knowledge of the risk, and they are still ready to go ahead with the deal because they feel that they can manage that risk and take into their stride. So they are still maybe there will be some negotiation in the kind of the deal structure or the deal pricing to some extent, but they are ready to give a further go ahead with the deal because they feel that they can assume that risk. Now coming to the deal math, right? So here so this is a diagram where I think some of these points have been touched by Jyotirmoy as well earlier in the first session. So we spoke about EBITDA multiple, we spoke about revenue multiples, etc., right? So let us say in a most deals where the company is profitable and the company is in a growth phase, etc., EBITDA is the, what do you say, like is the most sought after number, or people focus so much on EBITDA to arrive at the value, right? Or at least that becomes the cornerstone, you can say. Why EBITDA? Anyone? Because even say if it's audit, let us say balance sheet is audited, I mean the financials have been audited, and in the financials it is shown you have a gross profit, you have a profit before tax, you have a profit after tax, right? Most of the financials don't show EBITDA itself in our statutory financials. But why EBITDA? Why not PAT? Why not PBT?
It's a non-GAAP measure.
Isn't it harder then? If it's a non-GAAP measure, it's very tough. It doesn't have a definition except for a simple saying that it's earnings before depreciation, interest, and taxes.
Yeah, I think yes. You can go.
The PAT can vary depending upon the capital structure. So
excellent. That's the right answer. how would one value the business? Because I want to know the business valuation without having an impact of the leverage playing into place. I don't know how I fund the business. I want to know what the business can generate, right? So what is then EBITDA represents is that, the profitability of the business before my funding structure comes into play. I can fund the same business. You take a business and do a math, right? If I fund everything by debt, what will be my profit? If I fund everything by equity, what will be my profits? The profit after tax will be very, very different. If you same business, let us say two businesses are there, company A and company B, similar revenue, similar EBITDA percentage or margins, and one funds the business with 80% debt and 20% equity, other funds 100% in the equity. So whose profit after tax will be higher? What do you think? The one who funded through the equity has a higher profitability, right? As a PAT percentage. But if you see the return on equity, whose will be higher? Who will have a better return on equity? The one who had the leverage, right? Mostly, unless the cost of equity is that low, generally you end up with very high cost of debt is very high and cost of equity is low. Then otherwise, in most scenarios, the leveraged business will have a higher return on equity, but the profitability at a PAT level will be different. So
that covers I and T part of it. Why before depreciation also?
Yeah.
You covered interest because of the leverage, tax because it can be efficient between debt versus equity. The return on capital can change significantly. That's where the leverage will play out. But why before depreciation also? It's a non-cash item. So how can we connect the dots here? So EBITDA is nothing but a pseudo cash flow. So if you were to go back to your maths, which you would have studied for discounted cash flows, how do you actually derive cash flows? If you were to break down the cash flows into three buckets, right? Standard operating cash flows, financial cash flows, investing cash flows. Where does our fixed asset investment sit in? Investing. Where does our fundraise or borrowings and all sit in? Financing. What are we talking about then? We are talking about a P&L number that is representative of something which is almost linked to your operating cash flows, right? Now, hence, when you do discounted cash flow methodology based enterprise valuation, what is a driver that you can peg that to? Like, for example, if I arrive at a 100 crore valuation using a discounted cash flow methodology, which number in the P&L can I peg it to? EBITDA, because I can say it is 10 times the EBITDA. Like I can earn 10 times my current profits, and that's my overall business's valuation, right? So that's the logic.
Yeah. And the multiples, as we have already dealt with it. So it's basically the EBITDA multiple, whatever agreed multiple becomes the valuation. Valuation methodology could be different as well, as DCF is a methodology is there, or comparative benchmarks are there, various methods. But in this simple example, we have taken, like say, EBITDA multiple as a valuation for arriving at the enterprise value. Now, what is enterprise value? Anybody knows? Sorry? That's right. That's right. So this is the value of the business or the company before the element of debt which comes into the picture, right? And this is assumed the value which is debt free, cash free. So so that your base EBITDA itself is without getting the impact of the debt, and so you eliminate that from the enterprise valuation also. Whatever value you get based on the multiples is nothing but the enterprise value before any. It's like that value is debt free, cash free. That assumes that there is no debt in the company, there is no cash in the company, and normal working capital is there in the business to run this as is, right? So that is the primary reason. After the EBITDA, there are two more major important aspects which comes into all the SPAs or the deal discussions. One is net debt, one is working capital. And net debt is what? Total, whatever is the debt minus cash, okay? So that is the debt. So if there is no debt, cash gets added to the enterprise value. If there is a debt, you reduce the cash, take the net debt, and then reduce it from the enterprise value to arrive
Again, what's the rationale behind it? Any thoughts? Why a transaction is tried to be struck at debt-free, cash-free basis? Have you heard of this term debt-free, cash-free before in a transaction scenario? If you have heard, why is a transaction constructed on a debt-free, cash-free basis? Any thoughts? There's a logic behind it, very substantial logic, again linked to our cash flows, our DCF methodology.
Interest on the debt, which is a tax.
No, interest is futuristic, right? It's the future cash flows. But why a transaction is struck debt-free, cash-free?
I think the cost of capital can be different for different persons, so that may be the reason.
So that is before the cost of capital, you kind of a price that is already arrived at as enterprise value. That's one of the reasons. Anything else that comes to your mind? Why is a transaction struck debt-free, cash-free? Let me make it easy for you. Assume a company has zero debt, and as Rajaram pointed out, it has only cash. Let's arrive at an enterprise value of 100 crores, and the book has 10 crores of cash. So when we say debt-free, cash-free, it basically means any debt that's sitting on the book or cash that is sitting on the book belongs to the sellers. Now, in such scenario, what would the play be as a debt-free, cash-free transaction? What does it mean? So investor is paying a price for equity, you're right, and hence it has to be debt free. Okay, and cash, why cash free? Cash is just a, it's current balance, right? Yeah. It's future cash flows. You're right. So your enterprise value is my value of future cash flows, right? Now imagine my balance sheet has 10 crores of cash which belongs to seller. What am I going to do then? If it was not a debt-free, cash-free transaction, I know valuation is 100 crores. And to that I'll add 10 crores and I'll give him 110 crores. What am I doing in essence? I'm giving her 10 crores and he's giving, for the valuation of 10 crores towards the cash. Business valuation is 100 crores which is arrived at future cash flows, but current cash is 1 rupee is 1 rupee, right? You cannot add a value or reduce the value of a rupee as at a particular day, right? And hence a transaction is structured as debt-free, cash-free, because when the cash gets exchanged, the cash sitting on the balance sheet belongs to the sellers and it is the value that he's derived of the business till date and the value belongs to him and I pay him the value. In order to derive that value, if you use debt, that he needs to clear it because I might change the structure completely. I don't want a leverage. I might just fund it by equity. And hence he pays for the debts that he's taken over and he gets the cash that he's earned. And hence a transaction is typically struck at debt-free, cash-free basis.
Yeah, thanks. The other important element in the this purchase price computation or the equity value computation is the working capital adjustments. Now, working capital is again very, very fundamental to the business itself as operations, right? So, when we say debt-free, cash-free price, it also assumes the normal level of working capital in the business because certain level of working capital has to be in the business to run a business in the normal course. So, what is the adjustment for working capital? Anyone has a guess here or understanding?
What is working capital adjustment?
Rahul.
It's a reduction from the enterprise value because there's a sunk money that is required in the business.
No, but it is already invested. As far as cash flow is concerned, the money is already pumped in.
Yeah, that is there. But
Standard? Yeah. Why? Why is that adjustment?
you require either you require to fund the additional working capital or if there is a surplus then it belongs to the seller.
No, how much ever you need to continue the operation is called standard, as rightly pointed out. There's an adjustment that is made between the standard that is set versus an actual working capital that the sellers deliver. But I'm trying to just touch the concepts as to why. Why should you do a working capital adjustment? Because we are all chartered accountants. I'm trying to touch the concepts basis your understanding of, again, going back to DCF methodology, cash flows. Why do a working capital adjustment, standard versus actual? Absolutely right. Money is already pumped in, business already has a locked in working capital that is required to run the business at current steady state operation, as Rajaram called out, which describes a lot about the standard working capital position. But what gets actually delivered, there's an adjustment made, and the question is why.
Some debt-like adjustments may be included in the working capital.
That is how you define working capital. That's the second concept. So what sits in working capital versus
What
sits
should,
in debt,
yes.
assuming we are clearly aligned. But why make a working capital adjustment?
If the seller continues to run the business, if the buyer continues to run the business, he needs to have that minimum amount of working capital in the business to continue. Otherwise, he will have to infuse again additional money to bring it to that level of working capital to run the business.
That's right. That's right. See, as he pointed out correctly, to continuously run the business in a normal way, like without getting too much of disruption, you need the normal level of working capital to be in the business. Say like if there is a 90 days debtors to be there in the business, we assume that it will continue in the near future in that way. Or you have a regular payable cycle of 60 days, you assume that that 60-day cycle will continue even in future. Let us say like somebody has not done, like say you signed the deal today, and then after 2 months you are closing the deal, and actually the transaction purchase price gets exchanged, and then you pay the money, you should get the shares. Just imagine a situation, in between the 2 months, seller has not paid any liabilities. He has just kept on piling up the payables, and he has accelerated. He has given, say like normally you would have not given any cash discount to anybody, right? And you have taken additional, say I'll give you 2% discount, you pay me upfront only, or I'll give you 5% also, it doesn't matter. You give me the money. So moment the receivables is converted into cash, in a debt-free, cash-free model, what happens? Cash gets added to the enterprise value, and you get, the seller gets that money, whereas you have left the, business with the significantly lower receivables, significantly higher payables, which is, resulting, basically what happens after the business is taken over, the buyer has to then fund that business, because immediately after taking over, what happens is you have to then clear out the payables faster, which basically means you have to fund more money into the business to clear out those payables. And in the normal scenario, the customers are not going to pay you any faster. They'll still take 90 days, which means that, after going into the acquisition, you have to fund that receivables for few more days, another 90 days, till that, the receivable is normalized. So that is one of the key reasons why normal level of working capital and any delta between the normal level working capital and the actual working capital which is there on the date of closing needs to be adjusted in the enterprise value itself.
Rajaram, is it okay if I say something?
Yeah.
So, I'll just like take, 1 minute. So let's take what Rajaram is saying, right? Normal level of working capital. Let's take a scenario. Typically, let's say only there are two components in the balance sheet. One is your receivable, and one is your payable. Receivable getting from the customer. Now, typically on any given day, let's say on the 10th of the month, typically every month, you have the business is not growing nothing. It's a steady revenue month-on-month business. You have 100 rupees of receivable and you have 80 rupees of payable. Receivable is your customer billing that you are supposed to get, payable is your salary. So my net working capital, I'm not using cash here, is 100 minus 80, 20. Now what I do, I am selling the company on 15th. Now I go and collect. I tell the customer, give me this extra money right now. Normally he won't give, but I give him some, as Rajaram said, I give him some 2% discount, which is out of the ordinary course of business, and say that, give me some 10 rupees out of this. So what happens now? My receivable becomes 100 minus 10, 90. And my payable is 80, right? So my new net working capital is 90 minus 80, 10. Where did this extra 10 rupees that I have got from the customer, where is it sitting? Cash. The cash is already, Rajarama has given the cash, no, after net debt adjustment to the year. So basically, the 10 rupees that extra that I have got from the customer in the form of receivable, if I just pass it as cash to the seller, then the seller has got extra 10 rupees. Next month, you will not give the discount. When I acquire the business, you will not give the discount to the customer, right? Then it will be same 100. So that means you have lost that extra 10 rupees, which you should have ideally got from the customer. On the other hand, let's say this way, that the reverse of this also happens. So in this case, what will happen when Rajaram will do the net debt adjustment, after that he will minus the 10 rupees, because that extra 10 rupees is not going to come from the customer, it has already come. Now look at the scenario from other side. That same 100 rupees, due to some reason, I have decided that I will do some extra work for the customer for strategic reason. So instead of 100 rupees, I do 110. Now the entire 110 is remaining. Now my normal working capital is 100 minus 80, 20, and my new working capital is 110 minus 80. Let's say, again, let's assume that there is no hanky-panky there. I have really done this business, I really want to. Then that 10 rupees should have come no extra, it should have sat in my cash. No? Now it is not doing it. Why? Because customer will pay me later. It is different from my now, but then it is my cash. So then, when Rajaram gives me that money of net debt adjusted cash, he will add that extra 10 rupees that is sitting as additional receivable. So that's the way you do the net working capital adjustment. It's only the incremental part that get added or subtracted from that net cash that you are doing. I hope I could make some sense in
right. Thanks. So now let's get into specifics of some financial diligence. I know we are running behind schedule a little bit. We'll try to cover as much as possible. Definition is fine. So the primary thing is, as we discussed, it's about collecting information about the target company, about their business, and then understand which business environment it operates in. And basically what it does is allows the buyer to make an informed decision about the investment. It's a business oriented analysis. See, actually, since here all of our chartered accountants here and practicing chartered accountants, it is very, the skill sets required is very similar to audit in the financial diligence also, but the mindset in which you look at will be slightly different. So it is, it's not so much about presentation or accounting aspects only. It's more about business. You are trying to see how the financial statements or the numbers which is reflected in the financials or MIS, how it reflects in the compared to our understanding of the business. Is it talking to each other? Is it in sync with what we understand from whatever we have discussions we have had from the management, or what is disclosed in the information memorandum, etc. And it's a fact gathering exercise. It's not about, we are not going with the mindset to identify some kind of fraud or some kind of wrongdoing, or it's not, the idea is not to identify only issues. It's actually about the fact gathering, what is happening in the business. And understanding of the industry of the target is very, very important in the financial diligence, because each industry has a specific nuances. The way it operates could be very, very different, etc. So that is something which is required. Evaluation of the business model, which we have already touched upon. So in substance, it's not just about checking the facts and summarizing them, but it is also about interpretation and how we see. As I said, it's about whether the numbers are really talking to the the discussions or the disclosures which the company had made otherwise in terms of in their selling documents. Now coming to financial diligences, primarily diligences can be initiated by both buyers or by seller. So in the buy side, basically the investor or the acquirer appoints an advisor to carry out the financial due diligence. So the area of interest and the scope, etc., is driven by what interests the buyer or the investor. Similarly, a diligence can also be initiated by the vendor, the seller, which we call vendor due diligence. Anybody has an idea about why vendor diligence, or when a vendor diligence can be initiated and why? Sorry? Yeah. Correct. Any reason why they might do it?
To ensure that his all his whatever drawbacks which may be found by the buyer is already taken care, and so when the other party comes for a due diligence, you are a good boy.
Yes, yes. So that is one of the benefits of having a VDD for a seller. Any other? Excellent. That is one. That is also one of the reasons. See, in a vendor DD, what happens? Like say for instance, as sir said, so there is a as a benefit for the seller is when you have done independent evaluation of your business financials, you are you are able to understand what the buyer might be able to find out when they do their buy side diligence, right? So you are prepared, much more prepared. Your the records or the information which you are going to share with the seller with the buyers is more streamlined and structured, and you know how, and you can already start preparing for certain steps which will address the concerns or potential issues which may arise during the deal closures. So those are already taken care of at the time of deal negotiations. So that is one benefit for the seller. Other one, as you said, it actually saves the time, especially in a situation where a seller is going to run a competitive process. Like say for instance, he knows that his business is getting an interest from multiple say acquirers or investors. So he wants to run a process. What is the how will you do? You can do that. Value maximization will happen when you run a competitive process, right? So they will appoint a banker like Jyotirmoy, and then they will run a process. They will appoint, like they will go and approach 10 private equities or venture capitalists and then say, have discussion. Out of that, some 3 or 4 will be shortlisted who are going to give the maximum value, like say for instance, or who are the best fit VCs or PEs for this business. And now, see, each one of them will start the diligence, and the bandwidth which will be required to address all those diligence guys from the company side is going to be humongous, and it is going to be really stressful for the company. So instead, what this vendor DD does is, it basically, you have the report prepared, independent advisor is preparing the report, and actually is for the benefit of the buyer. So the report will be issued and shared it with the potential investors, who will read the report, vendor DD report, and they will do their own incremental processes, because there may be certain things VDD report would not have covered, or they will feel that, okay, I need to recheck some of the things, or do something extra in certain specific area of their interest, etc. But in all of this, it still consumes less amount of time as well as lesser bandwidth at the seller side. So that is one of the benefit for the doing a vendor DD. But in a bilateral transaction, generally the buy side DDs which happen. The coverage, again, it can be limited diligence as well as full scope diligence, depending upon what the buyer really wants. It could be like where there is a specific requirement to look at only like specific aspects, it could be limited to that alone, or it could be general standard full scope diligences. The process of the diligence is fairly straightforward. You first understand based on who is appointing you, whether it's a buyer or seller, understand what is the requirement and what kind of areas needs to be covered in the scope of work. You agree on that scope of work and sign the contract, engagement letter. You then share the information checklist with the company, with the target company basically, so which is going to share the information basis which you complete your field work. After the analysis, you identify the issues and then have a discussion with the management to understand their perspective. A lot of times we, as a process, we identify certain issues. It may not be a big issue because there may be a proper logic or rationale for for particular trend or a particular issues which has been noted. Then basis all of these inputs, you prepare a report. So report again can be different types, wherein you can be just keep only the issue based, wherein it's only you talk about the key negative points which you need to address, or in some cases it could be real long form report wherein you can describe everything about the business, you show various analysis and cuts for the benefit of the buyer and reader, and it can be then finally it will be discussed with the investor, the client, and then finally the report is issued. So this is a typical process in a financial DD. Now, when we go through all of this process, it is not always straightforward and easy. There will be always cases where there will be data limitations, and the time limitation is always there. So, in every deal, everybody wants it yesterday, right? Not today. So, in such kind of scenario, there will be always situations where, the quality of output will depend on both time and the information, level of information which is there. The quality of information plays a key role here. Many times the quality of MIS, which is tracked by the companies, especially in a startups or a promoter-driven companies, etc., it's a big challenge because a lot of things are known only to the promoters. Nothing is in writing, nothing is structuredly, in a structured manner, nothing is tracked. Those kind of issues are there, so it can be challenging. So many of the information, like let's say product level or a customer level margins, etc., may not be there at all maintained. Certain other challenges will be in, like say, public listed companies. Public listed companies, if you are doing a deal, so there is a possibility that they will have restrictions from SEBI and various other or stock exchanges, etc. So they don't want to disclose certain things which is not disclosed to the public. So you will have to work, work with the available set of data which can be used for the decision making. So those kind of limitations can come. Similarly, the other issues like, company may prepare certain MISs based on what management wants and what is used for their tracking versus what is there in the financial statements. We have seen many times, financial statements and MIS don't talk to each other, and numbers are very, very different, and it becomes very difficult which one to rely on at times. And in many cases, we have seen MIS is more reliable than the financial statements. So we'll have to kind of have that qualitative discussion with the company management and understand what is the better source of data to be used for making a clear understanding of the valuation of the business. You want to take some? Yeah. So on the just quickly touch upon this as well. So there are we have already touched upon two types, like either typical M&A happens where the corporates go and acquire another company, or it could be a financial investor like a private equity or venture capitalist who do the investment into the company, but they are not going to really run the company. So the company is still going to be run by the promoters. So when they are investing, their thought process will be different, right? So when strategic investor like corporate invest do a M&A, so their objective is really long term. So they are doing it for, say, certain strategic reasons like expansion, market expansion, product diversification, etc., etc. It could be various things, and they are playing the long game, right? Like, so they are going in and they are waiting. It's not going to be like, no, I'm going to go out and sell this company in next 3 years or 5 years. Not that sort. So their priorities will be different. Whereas the financial investor, so we all the private equities and venture capitalists, they have a finite term within which the funds have to be returned to the investor, their investors, because they are effectively fund managers. Private equities and VCs are what? Like, they're fund managers who compile all the money collect money from different people, HNIs and various other further funds. So, and then they'll have a term within which they'll have to return the money with the returns, right? So that is the main objective for the financial investor. So of course, then what happens is they will have to choose companies which are typically in a growth phase, which can generate cash, which can give value for them. Value creation is the major driver for private equities and venture capitalists, and it has to happen in a given time frame. It cannot go. No PE is going to bet for 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line. It will be only in their selling document, but they don't want to wait that long. So it will be like, like 5-year time period, 7-year time period, what is agreed. So that's the time period within which they want to exit, because that's when they have to return their funds to the end investors from their side. So their priority will be very, very different. So if you see, the financial investors will be more worried or more focused on their cash flows and whether the sustainability of the business and the track record, the quality of the management, quality of the financials, all of them become very, very important for them. Whereas strategic, while all of the above is also important for the strategic, but they are not, they are worried about more about the synergies, the compliances, the gap, operational aspects, etc. So all these things will be important for the strategic investor. And coming to the some certain other fundamentals, as we discussed, business environment and market those will play critical role in how this transaction evolves. Public listed companies versus private companies, there could be different regulations or aspects which need to be taken care of. Third party interests, there may be already existing investors also, so where if a new investor comes in, so there may be right of first refusal for the existing investor. Sale of business versus sale of shares of the target. Again, this is an important aspect and which will have a different implications in the diligence. Sale of shares is where you are already identified the company and doing a diligence on the company's books and financials. Whereas sale of business is, it could be one division or one segment which will then have to be analyzed and reviewed of that particular business segments profitability and the balance sheet which you have to analyze. So there is a carved out financials will be required. In some businesses it may be easy, wherein the specific profit centers are kept and the company may be tracking certain things, but in many companies it may not be possible. Certain businesses, then they'll have to really draw new balance sheets, financials for the purpose of diligence, which can become very, very complicated depending upon the size and nature of the business. Tax consideration, of course. You want to take this? 20 minutes. Yeah. So now coming to the certain focus areas which within the financial due diligence, the first and foremost is the quality of earnings, gross margin and cash flows, which we've already I think discussed at length in terms of why EBITDA is important or what is the sustainability, etc. But let us just touch upon quickly on some of these aspects. One is seasonality of the sales. So why seasonality of the sales is again so far as it is happening regularly, it is fine, but you need to, as a buyer, you should know when the seasonality happens and it may have an impact on the working capital, by the way, more than the quality of earnings, because anybody has an idea in terms of which we just touched upon earlier, right? Debt free, cash free model with the normal working capital. Why seasonality is important in this? If at all seasonality is in the business, why is it important?
The working capital level in the company will be different if there is seasonality in sales.
Okay, and how will it impact?
Depends upon the time at which the transaction is being done.
Right.
If in a lean season, the working capital requirement may be extremely less, but in season, the requirement will be much higher.
Right.
So if you are consummating a transaction at one point in time, then when the season comes in, it may not hold good. You may have to infuse additional cash into the business to run the business.
Yeah, you're right. Basically what happens, you would have defined normal working capital. Now what is normal working capital? So in a steady state business, which is like generally linear types, right? Like it's spread across equally generally throughout the year, then it's not a problem. It is like you have determined what is normal working capital and do the adjustment for plus minus variation at the closing date, you do it. Let us assume that you have taken an average for the year, or based on the say year end balances, you have taken a defined normal working capital levels, right? Now seasonality happens, like say your transaction closes say in September. Let us assume that September the Q1 Q2 is the peak period for the business. More likely that end of September you have the highest working capital requirement of your business, because most of your sales have happened in Q1 Q2. Maximum working capital is sitting in September. So if your closing happens and you have taken a normal working capital based on the March figures of the previous financial year, basically what happens, you will end up paying to the seller that differential, which is much higher, which is also normal. Actually, if you look at it, it may be a normal working capital requirement for September itself. So you need not pay in the normal scenario. Similarly, it can happen the other way around also, if it goes other, but if the seller and buyer are smart enough, they will know how to kind of define what is normal. Now coming to the next point here is dependency on customers and suppliers. So again, this is an important aspect, because as a business, one needs to know if there is any significant dependency on any particular customer or vendor, which can disrupt the business if they decide to kind of discontinue the business relationship with the company. So then if there's such risks, then you need to be aware of and how to kind of bring that into your valuation model. It may be some sensitivity may be required for your business model. Okay, if this customer tomorrow discontinues, what will be my situation? What will be the profitability? What will be the revenue? Next one is on the gross margin, rate of growth and sustainability. Again, this is an important aspect, of course, because there could be situations wherein companies' financials may have been impacted by certain unusual transactions or one-off big contracts or certain highly profitable contract or highly loss-making contract also for that matter. So one needs to normalize these aberrations and try to see what is the more likely scenario in a sustainable basis.
In essence, if you were to look at the list, right, which is on the screen, and I'm trying to interject here for a reason, as to why all of these are bucketed under this subject called quality of earnings, gross margin and cash flows. How does it help an investor? Like, why does a diligence person find issues of this nature? Why do they need to jump into these subject matters? Any thoughts as to why? What is quality of earnings? How does it actually have an element in the overall transaction as a driver? Any thoughts? Whether it will be consistent year on year? Oh, it affects EBITDA. Yeah, but how do you see our thesis was we are doing DCF based on future cash flows. It affects the valuation. How? My question is how? It all affects the cash flows, right? Like if I have seasonality in the business, it depends how do I model out the cash flows? How do I model out my requirement for working capital infusion in each of the periods? It all comes back to DCF. Gross margins. A business represents it's making 25% gross margin. What if it's actually not true? What if the gross margin is actually 10%? It basically means there's something sitting in their business model. With how do you actually forecast what kind of cash flows you'll create, right? Biggest driver revenue, second driver gross margin, then you have fixed costs, leverage playing out into EBITDA, right? Now each of these factors have a profile and also have a growth, a trend, which I can call it as a composition and it has a trend. Now both of these composition and trend factor do a math to create the overall revenues, which create a cash flow, and then there is utilization of that cash flow, one through direct costs and direct, resulting into direct margins, which are gross margins, and then you have fixed cash burn that is required, which will actually then result into EBITDA, right? So whole of this quality of earnings, hence the quality of earnings is not just EBITDA, it is revenue, it is margins, and it is actually EBITDA, which in turn is a replica of cash flows.
Net debt we have discussed, but only the point which we want to highlight here is what do we define as a net debt, right? So in normal parlance, when we see in the financials, there will be borrowings, which will be either classified as a short term and long term, but it need not be only debt in the business.
I think you had called out the word called debt-like items. So there is debt, there is cash, and then there is debt-like items and cash-like items. Anybody, because we are all accountants, I can ask this question very openly. What are debt-like items which typically sit in your balance sheet? Contingent liability does not sit on the balance sheet. Sorry. It is right. It's an off-balance sheet exposure. Very important for the buyers to know, because if there is certainty of those contingent liabilities materializing, then it becomes a debt-like. Absolutely right, but it is not a debt-like sitting on the balance sheet. I'm asking, sit on the balance sheet, what are the debt-like items which typically are already there in all of our accounts? Leaves. Why are leave balances, accrual towards leave balances, right? Or lease liability. Okay, now we can debate on couple of topics. It will get you the clarity. Okay, lease liability. Do you think it is a debt-like item or not?
When we are doing the valuation, because majority of the retail companies are operating on a lease premises, so at that point in time, whenever we are looking at the lease, we basically try to.
So should it not be working capital?
No, we don't, because
you're talking about retail business. The driver is revenue. So what is the direct cost of running that business? Leases. If leases is direct cost, isn't it working capital? Why is it debt? What is debt-like versus working capital? Working capital is what is required for me to create operating cash flows. We discussed that. What is debt-like? Anything which is financing in nature. How is lease liability financing in nature? Sir said lease liability is debt-like. Any arguments for or against? It's a commitment. Okay. How much is the commitment? The lock-in period commitment. It's called minimum lease commitments. There is a commitment of making that the operating cash flows will be used for it. But where will it come and sit in my cash flows? It operating cash flows, right? Like I might have an Ind AS adjustment to say, okay, I'll capitalize these leases, I'll create an ROU and get done with it. It will not showcase, it will not come up as a as an operating cash flow for me in cash flow preparation. But truly, is it? It is not, right? It is actually my operating cash flow. My business will not survive if I don't have the premise. For instance, retail. It is an operating cash flow, while minimum lease commitments are typically highlighted as the kind of minimum cash you need to service your leases, but it is not debt-like. Any other debt-like items? Advance from customers. Okay, let's debate. Advance from customers. I have a business where I always take 20% advance from customers. All my customers pay me 20% advance. Working capital or debt?
It will sit in my current liability, so most likely.
It is part of working capital. Now also let's connect to the example Jyotirmoy gave. A transaction is in the making. I never take advances from my customers, and this has actually happened on multiple transactions. Suddenly you'll see a contract, particularly in ITES business, for instance, you charge your customer say $100 per hour. Now suddenly I know there's a transaction happening. I'll tell my customer, I'll give you a discount of $20 per hour. You give me $80 per hour, but I want all the money now. Money is converted into cash. One-off advance from customers comes into my balance sheet. That is debt-like. While if I'm collecting it from all my customers, it is not debt-like. It is working capital, because that is always going to be churning. Any other points? Refundable security deposits. All of the typical nicer topics we are getting touched on. Okay, security deposits. How many of you feel it is debt? Refundable security deposit. No, let's debate on, we'll come to share application money next. Security deposit, refundable security deposit, working capital or net debt. I'm talking like an auctioneer over here as to who's going to choose which side. No, we're debating on refundable security deposit, sir. Okay, CCPS. So we have three in the line now. First one is security deposit, refundable ones. Do you think it is debt-like or do you think it is not debt-like? Any thoughts? All the security deposits are refundable. Mostly all the leases that we take, the leases that we, or rentals we have a security deposit. Is it debt-like? Is that liability or debt-like? It is debt-like. Why? What's the logic? So what you're saying is, as the business gets transferred from seller to the buyer, the seller has to bear that liability. See, the moment you said debt-like, you have to think from the transaction perspective. So seller will pay for that liability. He'll shut the shop and then transfer the business to you. So let's take an example of a company. The company has a retail chain. He's given total 100 crores of security deposit that's sitting in the books. The new buyer is coming and acquiring that company, 100 crores of liability sitting in the books. So the moment you call it debt-like, if I'm paying a price to the seller, I'm telling him you leave that 100 crores behind because I need to refund it. Pardon? It will stay in the books. So? The obligation? Okay. If something happens,
you are getting from that customer. He has put a security deposit because he is your continuing customer. He is going to be your customer in the future. For you to sustain that, whatever revenue forecast you have done, for you to sustain them, that those deposits have to continue, and therefore that has to continue.
okay. Now let me just, when I was doing this, calling these numbers out and calling this out, there are two key subjects over here. One is refundable security deposit, where I am supposed to receive the refund, versus a refundable security deposit when I am supposed to pay the refund. If I am into a business of leasing, I have a security deposit which is refundable from me. In that case, it is absolutely right. It can become an item of debt-like if My business, it is not my operational kind of revenues. I have certain property which is kept aside and I have received the money. Absolute debt like. In cases where I have given a deposit, where I need to receive it back from the lessor, as in the landlords, in that case, it will typically be not a working capital item, not even a cash-like item, because for me to continue the business, that particular money will always have to be locked in, and even if I give the cash back to the seller, I'll have to fund it again. So it is cash neutral. Now coming to CCPS. Now CCPS is compulsorily convertible preference shares. Do you think it is debt-like? How is it debt-like if it is compulsorily convertible? There is a coupon attached to it. So coupon is interest. No, you are talking about a transaction. So if I'm doing a transaction, if I have a liability sitting in the books, which is called a CCPS, will that be a debt? Will I be paying for it? Because it is compulsorily convertible. The holder of CCPS has to convert it into equity. He has no choice. But yes, the coupon interest or the interest that I pay is debt-like. I'll have to clear that liabilities out. If it is optionally convertible preferentials, yes, it has to be called out as debt-like, and it depends on the negotiation that happens between the principals if that particular holder of that PS will convert it or not convert it. That's a separate conversation, but absolutely right. You are calling out something, right? Share application money, payable or receivable? Payable. So I have a company that I've invested into and I have to pay share application. I paid already and there's an advance sitting in the books. So the liability towards pending share application money. Okay. No, that is absolutely, it's going to be debt-like or not debt-like? It is, yeah, but it has to be paid off, right? Okay. Any other tax liabilities? Absolutely. Anything that has to be paid to the taxpayer is debt-like, but now there is a catch there. TDS payable. Why? What's the logic? No, it doesn't matter, but it has to be paid to the government. It doesn't affect your final cash flows, it's right? The whole logic is this particular balance will always be there in your books, right? It will keep churning every month based on your, as your expense gets booked, as you actually clear your payments, TDS payable will keep sitting in. TDS receivable, is it a cash-like item or non-cash-like item? Or working capital? TDS receivable, working capital? No. No, but what is the utility? We have tax experts over here. What's TDS receivable? Where can I use TDS receivable? Can I set it off against my tax payouts? It's cash-like, right? I don't have, the cash flow can be reduced to that extent, so it is cash-like. Any other balance sheet items that you think are debt-like? There are many more. Minority interest, okay, that is more of equity. That's about how much of share you're buying and how much of, I wouldn't call it debt-like, it is more of deal structuring that can be discussed separately. Anything else? It is not, no. So typically, whatever is not part of working capital is not debt or cash-like. There are items that I called out, like for example, security deposits. This is sitting as an asset in my books. It is neither working capital nor cash-like. Fixed assets, for instance, the biggest of the balances in the balance sheet. While I'm buying a business which is into manufacturing, has invested crores into capital assets, will I call it as cash-like that the buyer will have to pay for it? No, right? It is actually somewhere few of the items define the going concern of the business as assets and liabilities, and that is what are parked aside and do not come into your purchase price calculation. But there are many more items, for example, provision for gratuity, right? You would have if it is funded or unfunded. Funded, cash has already gone out of the business. Unfunded, I have not paid cash for it yet. Imagine if it was funded, in the situation of a company which is funded, the cash is already out. The sellers actually have already exhausted that cash, right? In an unfunded situation, the sellers are yet to pay for that particular gratuity, so that liability becomes debt-like. So those are a few call-outs. If you have any questions on this, we can also take up later. We'll move on to the next one.
Yeah. So I think the key aspects coming out of this is, key takeaway is, there has to be a clear definition of net debt or what is net debt, what is net working capital. Because at the end of the day, as we have noted in this just 15 minutes of discussion, there can be different interpretations, what can be formed part of a net debt and what can be formed part of the net working capital, because it's not a definition which is given by in the accounting standard or anywhere else. It is primarily based on commercial negotiation and how you treat the business when you're trying to negotiate the deal. So but having the clear definition is very, very important to avoid the unnecessary disputes or kind of disagreements at the time of actual closing which happens. Because see, we have seen several cases wherein at the SPA stage certain definitions of net debt and working capital is very loosely worded, and then when actually go and trying to compute what should be the adjustment for net working capital or net debt, then there will be a whole lot of disputes which go back and forth, and there will be certain amendments may required, or it can even happen in such a way that there is total disagreement and the deal might itself may not happen. So having a clear definition of what is net debt and what is working capital is very, very essential. So actually diligence will give a lot of inputs to the buyer, as to buyer or the seller also for that matter. So what are the likely net debt items or what are the realistic net working capital scenario? So basis which they can actually agree on the definitions in the agreements based on the commercial negotiation, of course. Fixed assets, while while it is not a big value driver, but in terms of in the negotiations, but in certain businesses it can be very, very important, especially in a high technology or where the capex is the business is very highly dependent on the fixed assets of the business. Then it becomes very, very critical, especially in the case of what is growth capex versus maintenance capex. Because if it's a growth capex, it's going to give you future cash flows, future earnings, higher profitability possibly, etc. Whereas it's a maintenance capex, it is about having existing fixed assets maintained properly so that it can generate existing level of business continuing in that manner. So now why is it important is, like in a deal scenario, just to take an example, like you have a regular say capex, say maintenance capex, say like every year you spend say 5% of your gross block or a net block as a maintenance activity which is required because to run the operation smoothly in the company. So it's possible that once the deal is signed, the company is simply deferring their capex plan, because they know that okay, next 6 months this will run even if I don't really take up this maintenance activity, and then it goes on. But which means basically you have preserved the cash, you have a higher cash in the business, and at the time of closing you simply take that cash out of the business as part of the higher payout to the seller. But the buyer then has to come and make good all this unincurred or deferred growth capex, or the maintenance capex. Then it can be a loss to the buyer. So as a buyer, we need to know how much is the typical maintenance capex to be incurred in this business on a regular basis. So that has to be an important element which needs to be factored. Yes, that's what. So we need to know. I'm saying that from a diligence point of view, this is one focus area for us to know if there is a deferred capex or not. If
so it's like you point it out so that it is modeled out into your DCF either as capital outflow, or if it is not modeled out in the presentation that is given by the sellers, you deduct the cash immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all impacts. Those are ancillary items. So you come up with, so if you remember the presentation, there's something called as plus and minus specific adjustments. That is where all of these factors come in. Like all of the non-operating assets which are sitting on the balance sheet, which are being bought and its own valuation gets done and there is a purchase price adjustment for it. Because think of it this way, there's the transaction will have business plus other assets. Those other assets can be this land or anything else. We have seen situations where the promoter has in the balance sheet, in the fixed assets, some cars.
Yeah.
Right. There was a case where one of my target companies for one of the the retail investors here, they had a car which he had spent like ₹1 crore to modify it. Like it was valued at 2 crores in the fixed asset. Now The question was, we asked our client, do you want to buy it? He said, get lost, because the same car is worth 50 lakhs. He spent like 1.5 crores to just modify it and glorify it. I don't want it. So those again become like deductions that are separately adjusted for.
Or it could be a situation wherein actually the buyer says, I don't want these assets. It's like a non-core items. Like, it could be certain business, or it could be certain contracts. It could be various other things which is not really critical to run the business. They might say that, I'm not interested in this. You please take this out. So there could be an actual carve out which will happen, or there could be a situation where, certain specific items can be demerged. Various other options are there to take that out. So those kind of things also happen. So in some cases where they're ready to accept and take on, a specific value would be attached to those items which is outside of normal course of business. No, not really, because fixed assets, if that is going to be in the regular course of business, you are not going to attach anything further, because in the enterprise value it's already considered, so there is no further value which will be attached to the fixed assets. Unless, as we said, like certain items which is over and above the regular business, then you kind of add or minus or whatever. Other items are off balance sheet items, which is again important, because in many times in the financials or otherwise, they might just disclose it as a off balance sheet, contingent liabilities, etc., etc. But in reality, it could be, the assessment could be different. Like, the company might assess, okay, this particular risk or dispute may not really be ruled against them, but when you independently assess, you might have a different risk rating or assignment for that. So you may take the different viewpoint and adjust the purchase consideration as well. Or there has to be some different mechanism to address those risks. As I said, it could be indemnity, or it could be even situations wherein you take, there is something called seller's warranty and indemnity insurance as well. But I think we are running out of time. We can't get into the details of those. But there are certain situations which can be addressed to the insurance as well. W&A insurance it is called. Then the last bit is related party transaction. Again, very, very critical, depending upon what is the quantum of such related party, dependency on related party businesses, the support which company takes to run the business from the other entities of the group or the promoter entities, etc., becomes very, very critical, especially to arrive at the standalone cost. The business need to run on its own without the support of these related parties, especially after the acquisition. So in such cases, the normalization of the profits, revenues, business, the balance sheet, etc., we have to look at it without this related party transactions or the impact of those. Or some cases actually related party transactions may require even in future. In your model itself, you may have to build, okay, this support I need even in future, right? So then in accordingly you need to kind of consider or tweak your model. HR, again, it's an important aspect from the integration point of view to know what kind of employee benefits has been given, what kind of comp structure which is there, whether it will align with your structure, etc. Taxation, it's a very, very critical aspect. As I said, like it's not many people understand this. So it's again an important area which needs to be understood, diligence properly, and the implications coming out of that needs to be factored in properly. Anyway, those will get covered in the second half today. And lastly, anything about the separation and integration points, which will have, where the synergies are, or what are the certain things which we need to, the company may need to improve. Like during the DD, we might find a lot of, improvement points, or the improvement in the accounting systems, or the MIS, etc. Those things which can be kind of agreed upon. Transition services agreement, especially if there is a highly promoter driven companies are there, and if they are actually exiting, then you may need certain kind of transition, or certain very key managerial personnel are there, the business is dependent on them, so then you may need kind of business continuity agreements with some of those people. All these aspects need to be covered. So in essence, basically the diligence tries to touch upon all these aspects, which is basically gives the levers for negotiation for the buyers, and it identifies the risk for them to kind of ring fence themselves from from any kind of untoward kind of incidents or risks coming from these past events, and also take that informed decision. So that's the end objective actually. So that is the real utility of this due diligence for a buyer. So that is primarily it. And the limitation from a quick to summarize is, it's not like an audit. We are not following certain audit standards or something like that. So it is based on what is the need of the buyer. Those will be the areas which will be analyzed. There will be a lot of interpretations or the, as we discussed, subjective decisions what has to be net debt, what is working capital, etc. And it's not like detailed study of internal controls. It's more about looking at the books. There is a minimum reliance is placed. I mean, at least we place the reliance on the information given by the company, unless we feel that we have a reason to believe otherwise. But otherwise, we generally take the reliance on the company given information. And it's not any attestation services, etc. So dependency on the target is very, very important. If that thing is doubtful, then the utility of diligence itself can be also lower. So reliability of information given from the target is one of the critical aspects. I think that broadly sums up the the diligence part of it. We can still discuss maybe informally. We are just definitely running out of time. And we'll take it up in maybe in some other points we can cover in the panel, the discussions towards the end of this day's session. Thank you.